Welcome in, McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. July 23rd, just a handful of days away from the teams reporting to camp in the NFL. They're reporting all over the place. It feels like it's only a matter of time. I'm Greg McElroy. Cole Cubelic is out, continuing his vacation, a well-deserved vacation at Gulf Shores. But along for the ride the next 3 hours will be John Saber and, of course, Damian Mitchell. 800-239-9569, 205-834-9450. A lot of kind of interesting hyper-local news today. We will start with the report that the Birmingham Stallions will be relocating out of Birmingham. I'm kind of amazed at how many people are like flabbergasted by this. It's not really that big of a surprise to me. I guess when I look at the markets that they're trying to kind of bounce around to, the upcoming markets are Boise, Columbus, Lexington, Louisville, possibly Orlando, what have you. But I went to Stallions games. They were sparsely attended. I mean, this is just not that big of a surprise to me. I mean, I'm disappointed. Disappointed that my kids can't go drive 5 minutes from the house and go watch professional sports, but I can't say it's like a huge surprise. Birmingham, they're pretty outspoken about the fact that they'd won 3 championships in a row and still very few people were attending on a regular basis. I don't know why that is. I've never connected the dots to that. I feel like we did a pretty good job of supporting it and promoting it on our show. We're not necessarily breaking down the UFL on a week-to-week basis. The numbers reflect not needing to. But what I'm trying to figure out is, I mean, everyone's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're leaving. Well, why didn't you go to the games? And I'm not talking to everybody. There's a lot of people that didn't. I mean, I didn't go to all the games. I'm not going to try to pretend like I did. I went to a few, but certainly not all. It's hard on Sundays in some cases with church and kids and Saturdays when you have so few Saturdays a year to not be doing things. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go spend it at a stadium. The only reason I did is because I got kids. I wanted them to go experience it, go see it, and I don't get to take them to games on Saturdays in the fall. So I guess at the end of the day, like, this is just not that big of a surprise to me. I'm not taken aback. Saber, what was your reaction when you heard that the Birmingham Stallions would potentially be relocating?
About, I want to say what was expected. Most of the listeners here, I think, especially on three-man front, because they've helped cultivate a decent following with that, but also know that maybe around the rest of the city or the rest of the state, there wasn't that much FOMO with it. I hadn't gone to a game. There were times that I did want to, but like with you, I don't have kids, but schedule just never worked out to where, oh, hey, let's go do that. Oh, we got this to do, or oh, we've got this weekend, or
oh, the Stallions are on, drop everything.
Yeah. Or honestly, sometimes it's May and it's at 11 on a Saturday. It's gonna be hot and outside. I don't know if I want to do that. I watch several of the games at home,
sure.
So I at least enjoyed some of the product, but also if this were to happen, I would hate to see it because not only is Birmingham a championship team, I do feel like there is a decent fan base in here. But I guess what I question, the markets that they're looking at going to, yes, I think there are football hungry markets, but are they robbing Peter to pay Paul? Are they going to, hey, we're going to go here to Boise, we're going to go here to Lexington? They're absolutely going to love it, and are basically moving to get the same attendance?
Yeah, without any inside information. I have none on the matter. I have friends that have worked in the league. I think the newness factor, I would imagine, I don't know this for sure, but I would imagine the newness factor with Birmingham, year one with the Stallions, led to a pretty decent pop in attendance. I would imagine, and I don't know how long the UFL will go. I mean, they are committed to doing everything they can to make it a viable product for consumers in spring football. I look at the numbers television wise, and I don't know. I think the way that they're going to make it is by attendance. And if they have to change markets every 2 years, by all means, that's what you got to do, because they might be able to get that newness pop on a new market team and then go from there. Remember, they're still practicing in Dallas, so it doesn't make a difference. All their practice facilities, all that other stuff is still going to remain the same. So it's not like they have to move full facilities on a Mayflower truck like when the Baltimore Colts moved to Indianapolis. So it's not like it's as much of a significant. All you got to do is just find a new place to play the games. So if you can kind of get that newness pop every couple of years, then I don't really blame them for doing that. If it boosts attendance in the near term, by all means. Because I look at the television numbers, they're not good enough to warrant a significant dollar figure, I think, for the games. I don't know what's going to come of it. I look at the numbers, and when they're on ABC, they do fine. When they're on E1 or E2, not great. When they're on other networks, FS1, not great. Fox has done fine. I mean, there's definitely a little bit of interest for sure, but the overhead is significantly more on a game and a league than it is on a rerun of SportsCenter. And the numbers aren't that different. So I'll be curious, I think, to see what the long-term effects of the league are. But I think the next step for the leagues is to generate legitimate buzz and legitimate attendance. That's the way that they're going to continue on. Because I don't know if the television deal is going to be as lucrative as one might hope, because the TV numbers just aren't there. But we'll see. I want the league to work. I think it's great to have more opportunities for players, I guess. I think it's great to have extra spots, professional spots for guys to continue their development. I think it's awesome to have a place to go if, in fact, you just didn't get the reps or the circumstantial cut in the NFL. Go to maybe get just a little bit better. But how many success stories have there been? I think that's the other thing the league is battling with. For a little while there, you wondered just how big the gap is between an NFL player and a UFL player, or an XFL player, or USFL player. And there, for a while there, we weren't really sure. Now, as we've gotten 3-4 years down the road, you realize the gap's pretty significant. And it's not for everybody, but it's for some. And I hope, I really do, I hope that it works. I want it to work. And I'm disappointed it didn't work here in Birmingham. I am. I really, really am disappointed. And frankly, I'm a little surprised. I'd always thought Birmingham would support a team. And in the event in which there was a professional hockey organization or a high-level Major League Baseball organization in Birmingham, I always thought we would have the means to support it. But clearly, that might not necessarily be the case. I hope that as we continue to grow and we continue to cultivate, maybe we're a possible option down the road for an expansion franchise of some sort, but not for a minor league football team. I think that's perfectly fair. Can't be mad at anybody for that. I don't go to a lot of Barons games. I don't go to a lot of Squadron games, and I don't go to a lot of games involving minor league organizations. It's just not my thing. I'm a college guy, always have been. And then if I'm going to watch the best compete, by all means, I'll watch the best compete. But I hope that they find something, because I think it's great content in the springtime, and I'm never going to say no to more tackle football. But Boise, Columbus, Lexington/Louisville, and Orlando appear to be the next places that the UFL will be heading. We'll keep you posted with any and all information surrounding that. How do you feel about it? Are you mad, disappointed with this information that's come to light? We might actually ask him a question or two about the UFL. He's been calling UFL and XFL games for a number of years on ESPN and ABC, so we'll ask him about that as well. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the Big Ten. We have not really done a lot of Big Ten discussion, and there's several things that we want to get through here in the next 3 hours surrounding what I think is the second best league in the sport. It's a very, very good league. They've won 2 straight national championships, looking for a third with a third different team, and they might actually have the goods to make that run this year. When we come back, we'll listen to the commissioner of the Big Ten, Tony Petitti, and some of his comments from yesterday as we move right along here on McElroy and Cubelic. Welcome back, McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, Jox 94.5. I don't know why. I think it dates back to my time doing Zarzer, with doing radio with Zarzer, and he always would come in on the drop.
Really?
I never noticed it, but now it just feels comfortable. I just want to jump right in when the beat drops or when the song drops or whatever. It just feels right. But I'll tell you this, man, it's kind of a fun time in college athletics. I've noticed this a little bit, and as much as you want to make of it, you're welcome to. It certainly doesn't need to be dramatic, I guess, for lack of a better word. But it's kind of fun to have conferences openly sparring with passive aggressive lines at one another. Have you noticed the sheer quantity of passive aggressiveness that we've heard from commissioners the last couple weeks?
I'm here for it.
I'm all about it. I think it's hilarious because it's who can outsmart who and who can take a shot at someone without saying anything directly at all. And we might actually be going as far as to, I don't know, we might actually probably be the problems because we're the ones that are probably sitting there overanalyzing every single word. But hey, I don't care. I'll overanalyze. I feel like it's absolutely worth overanalyzing, especially knowing the odds here right now with the changing landscape, where it could go, what it might look like, and how the Big Ten's looking at it from a different angle of the SEC, and the ACC is trying to hold their own, and the Big 12's trying to get in there as well. I think what makes it interesting is that they all have such different priorities, and rightfully so. Their job are to the member institutions within their league.
I like that this feels like what politics should be. I mean, yeah, they're
as opposed to just open slander.
Well, yes, yeah. They're petty about it, but also somewhat civil. Yeah. But also working towards something, and then they know that while we're doing what's best for our league, they're not major stakes involved. So no. I get why politics has devolved into what it is. But one thing I guess I was thinking about listening to, I watched a good bit of Media Day coverage yesterday for the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Is how when they were saying what they were about the SEC, my first thought was, what do these dorks know? They haven't done anything. They haven't. And I was like, well, they have won the last 2 national championships. Big Ten's kind of technically bigger than the SEC. And my automatic thought was to just dump on them oh, they're wrong. I was like, well, hold on. Let me actually think about what they're saying. And
it wasn't too bad.
No, most of what they're saying, all of what they're saying technically is true, but also it's because it's against our boys. We're immediately what do they know? And it's well, hold on, actually look at it.
Yeah.
And it's okay, well, actually, yeah, that I get the point that they're coming from. From their point of view, looking at us, okay, I see it. I don't agree with it, but I see where you're coming from. You know what? Okay, fine. You can have that. You're a dummy, and I disagree, but you know what? That's cool. It's fine.
One thing that Tony Petitti is the commissioner of the Big Ten, and we want to listen a little bit to some of the things he had to say, but I've listened to his entire speech yesterday. It was not some ridiculous, earth-moving, earth-shattering explanation of where we're at in college athletics, but there were some interesting points, and I'll get to them in a minute. We'll start, however, by listening to kind of how he evaluates the strength of the Big Ten.
At the end of the day, I think our coaches are willing to take that risk because what they're thinking about it is not a snapshot of any one season. They're looking at how do we get more teams in contention. Look, as you expand the playoff, the rest of the bowl system and how we're trying to protect all of that, you're basically driving everybody to this one event. And it's just, I think in every league's interest, not just ours, to have more teams emerging, like Indiana did last year, giving more teams a chance to compete. And there's just huge value in having games across. Look, last year Ohio State was 7-2 and finished 4th in the Big Ten, right? Was undefeated in non-conference play. So, the idea that we can go deep, I feel pretty strongly about that. If you're 6-3 in the Big Ten, I would argue that's a great record. And if you stumbled in a non-conference game, I don't know why that disqualifies you. 8-4 is a winning percentage. If you project that winning percentage in every other sport, I'm pretty sure you make the postseason.
Hang on a second. So he talked about how Ohio State was undefeated in the non-conference. Yes, Ohio State absolutely was the best program in college football last year. They were the best team from start to finish. You will find no pushback from me. But he touts their performance in the non-conference where they played Western Michigan, Marshall, and Akron.
I would hope they were undefeated.
I just want to make sure that I'm reading that right. If they weren't undefeated with that non-conference schedule, then I don't know what to tell you. And he's probably already preparing himself this year with Ohio State being front of mind. If they lose to Texas week 1, they shouldn't be eliminated. I agree with that, by the way. Absolutely not. You shouldn't be eliminated. You lose week 1, hey, guess what? We now know what we need to fix. We now know what we need to adjust. We now know what we need to figure out. But don't sit here and tell me Ohio State's schedule was some gauntlet last year. It wasn't. Yes, they became the best team over the course of time. But here's their schedule. Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall. Those were their first 3 games. They went to Michigan State, who was not a bowl team. Then Iowa came to them. Iowa was a solid football team, but hardly fantastic. They went on the road to Oregon. Tremendous, tremendous test. Great test. Outstanding test. They went to Penn State. They went to Michigan. Michigan came to them. Michigan, I think, ended up being a pretty good team. They had Indiana, who was a top 10 team, come to them. Like, Ohio State is not the example you need to use.
No.
Ohio State actually played a difficult schedule. There's the problem, and I was having this conversation with Josh Pate via text yesterday. Might have been 2 days ago, whenever it was. And I don't know, all the days run together now. Anyways, in this era of bloated conferences, and I'm talking really more Big Ten, who has 18 schools, and ACC, who has 17 schools. In the SEC, I think the middle tier is so deep that everyone's schedule is relatively tough. Like, okay, Missouri's the most manageable, but it's still relatively tough schedule kind of from top to bottom because Team 13, there's not really that big a gap between Team 13 and Team 5. Like, that gap is pretty small. When you look at, for example, last year, Tennessee was Team 3, lost to Team 14 in Arkansas. Okay, that happens in the SEC more often than it happens in the ACC and in the Big Ten. And that's okay. It doesn't make the SEC better. It just is an acknowledgement of fact. Like, the gap is a little bit more narrow in the Big 12 and the SEC. In the ACC, Team 13 right now, I would have, let me tell you exactly who I have, just so you know exactly where we're at. In the ACC, I think Team 13 is Syracuse. Their win total this year is 5.5.
Ugh.
They're just not going to be very good. They have too many pieces. They have a tough non-conference game against Tennessee. They're at a tough schedule. Beyond them, it's Virginia. They're 14. So who are you taking in a neutral site game right now? Arkansas or Virginia? Probably Arkansas, right? I mean, more than likely. Now, Arkansas lost to Team 16 in the Big 12 last year in Oklahoma State. So, yeah, it's not like the SEC is immune to poor performances. Of course they're not. But I think when you're looking at where the Big Ten conference schedule becomes problematic is when you have a schedule like Indiana's last year, and you're really good, by the way. I think Indiana was legit and absolutely deserving of a spot in the playoff. I absolutely believe that. I still will believe that. That team was good enough to compete in the playoff. Now, in their playoff game, they were not competitive. They ran into a really good Notre Dame team, and Notre Dame was excellent, and Indiana really couldn't get much going. And they struggled at the line of scrimmage. They gave up one long run for 98 yards, and that was it. So I think Indiana was good, but their schedule last year was laughable. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. That's okay. They're not in control of that. But when Curt Cignetti tells us last year that he looked at the schedule in the preseason, he saw 10 wins, that should tell you all you need to know. Which I think is ironic coming from Curt Cignetti. And we want to listen to what he had to say about where the SEC is at. He was our receiver coach when I was at Alabama. I had a ton of respect for Curt Cignetti. I've always really appreciated Curt Cignetti. But I strongly disagreed with this comment here.
Here's the bottom line, okay? We picked up an extra home game, and we play 9 conference games. You know, the two best conferences in college football, any football guy that's objective will tell you, is the Big Ten and the SEC. All right? 12 of the 16 SEC teams play 3 G5 or an FCS game. 12 of those teams play 36 games, 29 G5 games, and 7 FCS games, and 1 less conference game. All right? So we figured we'd just adopt SEC scheduling philosophy. You know, some people don't like it. I'm more focused in on those 9 conference games.
Here's my thing. All right, fine. We'll drop we'll drop Mercer. I know we always go back to Mercer. I promise you, they're not the Mac and Cube punching bag. They're just the team that comes to mind first. I don't know why. When I think FCS teams, the first one I think about is Mercer. All right, so we'll drop Mercer. We'll pick up Northwestern. How's that sound? We'll drop Mercer. We'll pick up Purdue. We'll drop Mercer. We'll pick up UCLA. We'll drop Mercer. We'll pick up Maryland. We'll drop Mercer. We'll pick up Rutgers. We'll drop Mercer. We'll pick up Michigan State. Like you get the point here, right? And Michigan State, by the way, I think has a chance to be pretty good this year.
They should be, yeah.
So let's remove them from this conversation. But if you look at the rest of the league, it's not like those conference games those are guaranteed wins for the top teams anyways. And we're talking about playoff here. Like, when was the last time Ohio State had their hands full with Northwestern outside of a 60-mile-an-hour wind? Seriously. I mean, and that was when Northwestern was a lot better than they are now. I know Ohio State lost to Purdue in 2018 when Rondell White, or I think his name is Rondell White, whatever it was. The wide receiver went absolutely off, right? It was incredible. Just an incredible
Rondell
performance. Rondell Moore. Incredible performance, amazing game. Jeff Brom, by the way, is just an amazing game. So, yeah, it happens, but it's not annually. Do I wish the SEC played 9 games? Absolutely. I 100% want that to happen. But I don't think you necessarily need to start taking shots at the SEC and their strength of schedule when your schedule last year consisted of Western Illinois, FIU, Charlotte, UCLA, Maryland, Northwestern. By the way, I've yet to get to a team that went to the postseason last year. Washington did, Nebraska did, Michigan State did not. Michigan did, Ohio State did, Purdue did not. You're kind of getting my point. I don't think Indiana's in the position of starting to chastise teams for their conference or non-conference scheduling. They're not there yet. I think they're going to be good this year again. I think they have a chance to make a run at the playoff. But I don't think it's coming from a real place of authenticity when he's the one that's criticizing the SEC's schedule strength. The other thing I think was touched on yesterday by Tony Petitti, and I want this to happen so bad. I love this idea. People are asking him about non-conference scheduling and changing institutional control over non-conference schedules. So right now, for example, you're the athletic director at Auburn. You get to control who you play. You can sign these home and homes. You can sign 2-for-1s. You can do these games against local teams. You can do these games against national teams. It's your choice. You can do whatever game you want. And there, I think, is going to become a push at some point where the conference is actually in control of the non-conference slate. That's what I want. I want the conference to take control so that they can find marquee opportunities to promote non-conference games that will be widely consumable. Look, if you're an athletic director, you're in protect mode all the time. Rightfully, you should be. 100%. When you are a commissioner, you are in present mode. You want to present your league in the best possible way. Are you in protect mode to an extent? Absolutely. But I think ultimately for the greater good, more numbers means more eyeballs means more dollars. creating really good non-conference games is something that is absolutely worth watching. The other thing that he talked a little bit about yesterday is the automatic qualifier model. It sounds like they still remain very confident at the commissioner level that a playoff model can be figured out, even though there is not a deadline here in the near term where they're going to go and make a vote and totally revamp what we do in the postseason. But they seemed a little more confident in the Big Ten office that they can reach a resolution that leads to us locking in something for the long term. That, I think, was encouraging. The other thing he talked a little bit about was the possibility of play-in games. Play-in games, I think, are very interesting. Now, that only works in an automatic qualifier model. Play-in games would not work in a traditional 5+11 model. I know I say traditional. I should probably put air quotes around that because it's not.
It's not even established yet.
No, not even like something that's ever happened. But in a more traditional playoff model that we've utilized the last 12 years, where a committee is selecting the 4 best teams. And in this case, if we move to the 5+11, the committee will be selecting the 5 automatic qualifier teams that win their conferences. And then they'll have 11 of the best teams remaining. That's a model that we're more familiar with as college football fans. Sounds like with play-in games, there could be some interest there because it's more inventory. More games to sell means more money to make. And that really expands the playoff even further if you want to look at it. You go from 16 teams, you add 2 play-in games, now you're at 18 teams. You add 2 play-in games in the SEC, now you're at 20 teams. You add 2 play-in games in the ACC and the Big 12, now you're at 22 teams that are all theoretically alive to get to the college football playoff. And you want to make it really interesting, how about you take all the G5 conference champions and you do a little tournament? Now you're up to 26 teams in the college football playoff. And now the model that Eli Drinkwitz proposed last week with 30 teams in the college football playoff, we're a little closer to that number when you start talking about the possibility of play-in games in all these different conferences. So I'm not really against a whole lot that was said yesterday. I'm more aligned with what Greg Sankey says. I'm more aligned with we're not necessarily desperate to make changes because right now we're not forced to. I think Greg Sankey would love to go to 9 conference games, but he's not forced to, so why would he? I think Greg Sankey would love to have 9 conference games plus a 5+11 model, but in the 5+11 model, would that work with 9 conference games, and would the SEC continue to get the benefit of the doubt the way they have for the last 25 plus years? I don't know if they would. Because if you have a team that's 8-4 because they lost that conference game as opposed to playing an FCS team, which would have made them 9-3, then it's a little different animal. I don't know if they'd be given the benefit of the doubt. With last year's committee, it was all about wins and losses. They cared more about the record than they did about anything else. So if last year's committee were to be rinsed and repeated over and over and over again in the 16-team format, they're going to take the teams with the best records. Not the teams that played the hardest schedules, not the teams that had the toughest road, not the teams that had the best strength of record or resume. They're going to take the team with the best win-loss record. So I don't know exactly what that means. I don't know. It's not great. But I'll be curious to see where it goes. Look, the Big Ten's excellent. It's a really, really good league, but it's a very top-heavy league. I am in see it to believe it mode with the middle tier. I will continue to be in see it to believe it mode with the middle tier. And I'll tell you who's in that middle tier next on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning on Jox. Welcome back. It's McElroy and Cubelic. Little Big Ten today here. We don't do a lot of Big Ten very often. It's an excellent league. I like a lot of what I've heard from Tony Petitti. I think he's got some good big picture ideas for where the league is going. I lean a little more towards Greg Sankey's future view of the college football landscape. But I think Tony Petitti yesterday brought up some very interesting points. The problem is, I think when you look at the Big Ten, the top is so good. No one's denying how good Penn State will likely be this year. We know Ohio State's a defending national champion. They're going to be good again. Might have to replace some productivity, but they're going to be really, really good. And Oregon's not going anywhere, guys. Like, Oregon's going to be good for as long as we're alive. It feels like they're not going to go anywhere, not in this current landscape. They got too many resources. They got a great head coach. So the top three, it feels like there's just such a big gap. In the SEC, you have the top four. There's a tiny gap. And then 5 through 12 is kind of interchangeable. It's like, man, I don't know which. I mean, I could go any direction here. Like, are you going to tell me right now that South Carolina, who I would have, I don't know, 9th or 10th this year, if they assume they replace all their defensive personnel, can they be a top 5 team in the league, top 4 team in the league? Absolutely they can. They might have the league's best player on offense and on defense. So I just feel like that gap, I feel like those top 12 teams in the SEC, top 13 teams in the SEC, they're just bunched really, really well. It makes for highly entertaining. It also makes for very dramatic. It also makes for very stressful as a fan. In the Big Ten, there's not as much stress. There is some, because I think some of the teams in the top of tier 2 have a chance to take a huge step this year. Like, I know people will roll their eyes when I say this. I think SC is going to be really good. I think they're going to be really good. Last year, Miller Moss through 9 games had a bit of a struggle bus at times. Was good early, kind of fell off a little bit towards the middle part. Started to be a little more reckless with the football. Started pressing a little bit. But now in comes Jaden Mayava, and he went 3-1 as a starter last year. His one loss was to Notre Dame, and they had a game. They had the lead in that game. This is a team last year in SC, as crazy as this may sound, and this is something that kind of blew my mind. 5 of their 6 losses were within a score. So you know how we feel about close losses on this show.
Right, yeah. They're Nebraska. And
close losses are basically wins.
Yes.
But taking it one step further with SC, in 5 of those 6 losses, they had a fourth quarter lead in 4 of those 5. It's almost impossible to think they could lose 4 games with a fourth quarter lead. I don't think that replicates this year. I think they get over the hump in some cases. If you look at their efficiency metrics, they were a top 15 team last year, offensively and defensively. And assuming D'Anton Lynn, their defensive coordinator, can continue to put his spin on the defense, I think they're going to be really good. I think they're a legitimate playoff contender. What about Michigan? Michigan's 2 years away from being removed from the national championship victory. Last year, things fell off. They lose some key pieces on defense, but the one issue with Michigan last year from start to finish was their quarterback play. They played 3 different guys in Davis Warren, Alex Orji, and Jack Tuttle. All 3 were just not good players, and they didn't play well. Orji was a dynamic athlete, couldn't throw it. Davis Warren was fine on some of the underneath stuff, but they wanted to be a run-first outfit, and they couldn't run the ball well enough, so they couldn't put it on his shoulders, and Jack Tuttle was banged up. Now you insert a 5-star freshman. Whether Bryce Underwood is the answer or not early in his career is a big question, but he's at least got the potential of taking that team to the next level. So there's optimism there. I think defensively, Michigan's always going to be solid, guys. I don't know if they're going to be as dynamic defensively this year as they were at times last year and the year before, but they're still going to be really good. So I don't think I need to convince a ton of people about Michigan being in the mix. And Michigan's going to be a problem for everyone they play. Now it starts to get a little bit more interesting. And if you want to include USC in that conversation with Michigan, I will, because of how close they were last year. And while it wasn't reflected in the win-loss column, that team's closer than I think you might realize. Next up's the Nebraska team that in year 3, under Matt Rule, it's put up or shut up time. It's time to break through. And the good news is for Matt Rule, things have gone very, very well for him traditionally in his year 3 at a program. At Baylor, at Temple, year 3, they broke through. Are we making too much of that? Potentially. But they do have 2 new coordinators. That'll be interesting. I think Dana Holgerson, people know this name in this part of the world. And he can coach offense for sure. Say what you want about him as a head coach and whether or not he can truly lead a program to highest heights. I don't know about that, but the guy can dial it up from an offensive game plan standpoint. Dylan Raiola is going into year 2. He's going to be better. The receivers are improved. They bring over Dane Key from Kentucky, the wide receiver. I think he's got a chance to be a go-to guy. They've really, really underperformed up front along the offensive line. That group should be a little better because they bring back multiple starters and bring in a bunch of guys from injury last year. I think Nebraska is one of those teams that could make a big jump. I think Indiana will continue to be one of those really, really solid teams in the Big 12. If you look at their schedule, it's very gettable. You bring in Fernando Mendoza from Cal, one of the highest rated prospects in the transfer portal to play quarterback. He's more mobile than Curtis Rourke was a year ago. Curtis Rourke had played the whole year with the torn ACL. Now you have a guy that can actually move and can do some things. They're still going to be good along the offensive line. They bring in guys that started at other places in the Big Ten and at Notre Dame. Those guys should be in pretty good shape. And defensively, Bryant Haynes, their defensive coordinator, in 2023, they were 101st ranked defense. Last year, they were number 1 rush defense, number 2 total defense, number 6 scoring defense. And a lot of it's scheme. If you watch their scheme, it's really, really good. They do an excellent job. So they're really solid in the back end, really solid at the second level. They have their leading tackler back from last year, 3rd most tackles in the Big Ten, and Aiden Fisher. They're going to be really solid. I think Indiana is and could easily make a run towards the college football playoff. So those are 4 teams right now. That middle tier is solid. I think it's very, very solid. Now, is it as good as the collection of teams like Oklahoma? Is it as good as the collection of teams like Florida? Schedule-wise, I don't know. Maybe the schedule will be better. Maybe it will be worse. Maybe the record will be better. Maybe it'll be worse. But I think it's comparable. Here's where you start to roll the dice a bit is around Team 8, Washington. Washington last year, struggle bus, were not very good. And I think they endured some of the same challenges that Alabama endured last year because of the timing with which their job came open. Guys left. They're getting recruited all over the place. They had a bunch of guys leave because of the NFL. They go to the national championship game the year before. Now, year 2 with Jed Fish, big-time quarterback. Real big-time quarterback. This guy's got a chance to be big-time. Demond Williams, a name you need to know. Started to play quite a bit down the stretch. Took over in the second half of the UCLA game. He did take 10 sacks in his first start against Oregon, but if you look at his performance in the bowl game, he was legit. The guy finished last year as a true freshman with a 78% completion rate and an 8-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. He was also second on the team in rushing. Like, this guy's the real deal. And if he takes a step, Washington can be a huge problem. The team that everyone else is really high on is Illinois. They bring back so much production from a year ago. They won 10 games last year. They beat South Carolina in the Citrus Bowl, and they did so by just pounding away. Absolutely pounding away. Returned 15-plus starters, tons of expectations. The schedule is very manageable, relatively speaking. They avoid Michigan. They avoid Penn State. They avoid Oregon. They avoid Nebraska. They avoid Iowa. Their toughest games are at Washington. Ohio State comes to them, at Indiana, and against USC. Think they can't get 2 of those 4? I think they can. I absolutely think they can. And now you're thinking about a team that might be in the 10-win range. So Illinois is a really solid team. So that's the middle tier of the Big Ten. And while maybe not quite as flashy, it's still very, very solid. However, I've listed off just 9 teams in the Big Ten. 9. The rest, the Minnesotas of the world, the Michigan States of the world, the Iowa Hawkeyes of the world, those teams are all going to go bowling. I believe that. I think they're bowl teams. I think they'll be above 500, might even get to 7-8 wins in some cases. But there's major question marks surrounding some of those rosters as well. So that's where I think the drop-off is. Whereas in the SEC, you can go 12, 13 deep. In the Big 12, you can go 15 deep and not be able to tell some massive difference between Team 1 and Team 15. It's not a massive difference. There's a gap, sure, but it's a whole heck of a lot tighter than it is in any other league. The Big Ten's a little bit more like the ACC than they are like the SEC. The ACC has 2 clear front runners and probably 4 or 5 teams that can make it really interesting. It's not really like that in the SEC and the Big 12. But the Big Ten's going to be excellent. I really think it's going to be very, very good this year, but it hinges on what Nebraska does, on what USC does, on what Washington does, on what Illinois lives up to with their preseason expectations. If they can live up to expectations and Indiana can repeat what they did last year, if those teams can all live up to expectations, you can make a case it might be the best league. You really could. A case can be made on behalf of the Big Ten. But also, there are some big question marks with those middle tier teams. And then we get to the bottom, and it's tough sledding. UCLA, Northwestern, Purdue, Maryland, all those teams, it's hard to feel Rutgers. It's hard to feel real confident with what those teams are going to potentially be capable of. But I think the Big Ten will send 13 teams to a bowl game this year. That's a pretty good number. In an 18-team league, it's also a pretty good number when you're playing 9 conference games. So I think there's a lot to like about the league. And whether you like them, dislike them, don't want to support them, want to root against them, that's all fine, well, and good. Last year, the Big Ten got 4 teams in. The SEC got 3. So it's whether you want to acknowledge how good they are is up to you. But you have to acknowledge that their success will directly impact what the SEC does in the postseason. If Indiana makes a run, guess what? That could be a really good SEC team that gets left out. If Illinois makes a run, a really good SEC team could get left out. So it's important to be up to speed and knowledgeable about what some of these teams might be, because I'm telling you, man, there's just not that many spots. It feels like a lot at 12. There's just not that many. And we found out the hard way last year with 3 teams from the SEC ranked in the top 15 that were not in the college football playoff last year. So worth watching, worth monitoring, and we will continue with that conversation. I will tell you there's one team that I'm super, super intrigued by in the Big Ten. It's pretty fascinating. Just what might come about here in year number 2 under their head coach. And then in 10 minutes, a coach actually went on the record yesterday and talked about him losing the locker room. You don't want to miss that. And this head coach does have some Alabama ties. We'll tell you about that here in about 10 minutes. But when we come back, I'll tell you about the surprise team in the Big Ten next on Mac and Cube. Welcome back. Final segment, hour number 1. Here in McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, Jox 94.5. If you're waiting to hear what was said by a Big Ten coach yesterday about locker room dynamics, you'll have to wait just a couple more minutes, but you'll never have to wait for your dental care. That's because Family Care Dental has you taken care of to the urgent care office. You're going to be seen the same day in several locations to make it easy on you. Hoover, Fultondale, Homewood, Alabaster, and Trussville. Family Care Dental get you in the same day. Most insurance plans are accepted, and they're accepting patients of all ages. So give them a shout and go and get yourself a dental appointment. 874-9605. It's Family Care Dental. 874-9605. A team that I think is kind of being slept on a little bit. And it's hard for me to go all in on this team because their schedule is just too tough. It's just too tough. It might be one of the most challenging schedules I've seen in college football this year. How does this sound? At Alabama, at Michigan, Ohio State, at home, at Oregon, against Washington, against Iowa, and then against Illinois. The only guaranteed wins on their schedule are Miami, Ohio, Middle Tennessee, and Maryland. That's it. And that's the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the reason why I like the Badgers this year is they are resetting what they are offensively. They tried to be air raid. They tried to be spread it around. They tried to be new age. It just didn't work. And as a result, they kind of paid the price. They were 5-2 at the 7-game mark last year. They lost their first 5-game losing streak since 1991. They went 5-7. It broke a string of 22 consecutive years without a losing regular season and 22 straight bowl appearances. That was, at the time, third most in the country. But in comes Jeff Grimes. And Jeff Grimes, who is an offensive coordinator, has ties to Auburn, has been at Baylor, led them to a Sugar Bowl victory, has been at BYU, helped develop Zach Wilson. He went out and handpicked his quarterback from Maryland and Billy Edwards. And I think they're going to be better along the offensive line. I think they're going to be better at running back. I think they're going to be fine at receiver. And then defensively, they got to be a whole heck of a lot better at all 3 levels. But I'd be surprised if this team doesn't wake up a bit, because I think last year might have been rock bottom. Now, are they going to go and beat Bama and Tuscaloosa? No, I don't anticipate that. But I do think Wisconsin will be a much tougher out here in 2025. All right, next up, locker room fracturing from a Big Ten coach. We got. Welcome back, McElroy and Cubelic in the morning at Jox 94.5. Appreciate everyone in Huntsville listening on the ump. Appreciate those of you in Montgomery and in Mobile. It's great to be all over the great state of Alabama. Appreciate the support that you guys have shown the show. For those of you listening outside the state, you can always check it out on the app. You can stream it on joxfm.com. You name it, we got it here. First hour of the show on the podcast. Talk a lot of Big Ten. Talked a little Birmingham Stallions early in the show. Haven't gotten Damien's take on it yet. You sad yet?
Yeah, man, I'm frustrated. But again, it's just rumors, though. There's no confirmation yet.
All right, get
There's
ready.
No confirmation yet.
Let me confirm it for you. They're gone.
Well,
they gone.
I am very upset.
It's a bummer. Are you still going to root for him?
No.
The Seattle Supersonic fans root for the Thunder?
Wait a minute. The guy that's a Titans fan ain't going to be like, you know what? I'm going to cheer for the OT. You were the recipient of someone leaving town.
I've only known him as the Titan.
Okay.
Yeah, all right, here we go. All right.
Okay.
I've only known him as the Titan.
Okay. The Oilers were fire.
The jerseys were for sure.
Yeah, they were. They were not bad. Talk some Big Ten in the first hour. It was fun. I think the Big Ten's really good. I actually like Tony Petitti, their commissioner, a lot. I think he has a good understanding. I disagree with some of his viewpoints, but I think he's got I really believe this. I do think he wants scheduling uniformity, which I'm good with. I want everyone to, if you play 8 conference games or 9 conference, I don't care what you play. Play 4 conference games. Doesn't make a difference to me. Just everyone needs to play the same. Like, I want everyone to play the same. So if they need to drop one, fine. Make sure you still protect the non-conference, though. It does sound like he's interested in potentially bringing non-conference back to the top of college football, which is great, as opposed to at the individual level where every school operates in silos. We've already seen Big Ten teams cancel home games against Power 5 opponents, paying $500,000. I think they've canceled. I think it was Indiana canceled a home and home with Virginia.
Yep.
Virginia. Just making sure that Virginia.
Yeah, the same one from yesterday.
Gotcha.
Same one from yesterday.
Confirming. Virginia might be better. They got Chandler Morris, a quarterback, former Arkansas Razorback, former member of the Mean Green of North Texas, but I don't know. It's tough to kind of get around. But one of the biggest, I guess, most jaw-dropping admissions yesterday came from Maryland head coach Mike Lockley. And we've long talked about the dynamic in the locker room that can be created when not every single guy is equal. And that people ask me all the time, Damien, I'm sure you get asked too about NIL, and you can be in favor of guys getting paid, but you can also acknowledge the fact that when we were playing, everyone was the same.
Yep.
Nobody, it didn't matter what you made or what you drove or what color your car was or what kind of Jordans you had. No one cared. All we cared about was, can you help us win? If you can, great. If you can't, kick rocks. Pretty simple. And everybody, didn't matter if you had both parents, one parent, no parents, wealthy, poor, tall, short, fat, skinny. It didn't matter.
Nope.
Everybody was, can you help us win?
That's it.
Everyone had each other's back. Everyone supported each other holistically. And it's changed greatly in the era of NIL. And Mike Locksley made some comments about this while he was at the podium yesterday.
This, for me, is kind of a year of what I like to call vulnerability. One of the greatest characteristics you can have as a leader is the ability to be vulnerable. And I'll tell you, a year ago, Coach Locks lost his locker room, and for me to stand in front of a group of media and tell you that I lost my locker room, and it wasn't because I wasn't a good coach. It wasn't because they weren't good players, because we were better than a 4-win team. But what we had to do is we had haves and have-nots for the first time in our locker room, and the landscape of college football taught me a valuable lesson. And that valuable lesson is it's important for me, even in the midst of this change, to continue to educate our players on the importance of what playing for something bigger than yourself is all about. And I can tell you that if I've got to put my desk in the locker room this year, I will. And I expect our team to show up, play hard, and probably one of the most exciting things is if you ask me what kind of team we have, I don't know yet. And that's a good thing. And that's a good thing because as a coach, sometimes we feel like we have to have that answer. Well, I've got fall camp. I've got about 25 practices in July and August to figure it out and feel very confident with the changes and the elevation of our program that we'll put a product on the field that we can all be really excited about.
What's amazing, and you listen to Coach Locks right there, and he said how you have haves and have-nots in the locker room for the first time, and we've long wondered. No one's ever acknowledged it, but we've always wondered, like, all right, hey, this dude's making 500, I'm making 42. Like, why don't I make 500? Like, I've been playing. Why is this rookie coming in making more than me? I hate this guy. And all of a sudden, there's finger pointing and fracturing, and it can lead to a team that, by the way, had 5 guys drafted in the NFL draft. That was the 4th most in the Big Ten, the 11th most in college football last year, and they won 4 games. How does that make sense?
It doesn't.
It only points to locker room dynamics. So, Damian, when you hear a guy like Coach Locks, who you've been around some, like you've watched him, whether he was at Alabama as the OC, like you know what he's all about. Like, guys love Coach Locks, including myself. I love that guy. Always will. Even though I did give him a hard time about what color Range Rover he was driving. It was like, it was the ugliest color I've ever seen. I'm like, you're going to buy a $150,000 Range Rover and that's the color you want to get? Other than that, the guy's the man.
Great guy.
But it's crazy to hear him acknowledge that, man, we had challenges last year with the gap that existed even within our own locker room.
Yeah, and that's difficult for a coach to get out and say publicly that he lost the locker room. And we've all, like, we've been in locker rooms before where, it doesn't matter what religion you are, what you drive. We could care less. Can you pass a conditioning test with me? Can you run a route with me? Can you throw the ball? Like, that's where it's kind of puzzling that, man, the nature of what made the game so organic is the fact that everybody comes from different backgrounds, different, walks of life, but we're all looking towards one goal, and that's winning football games.
Yeah.
No matter how it doesn't matter how we got there, but to hear that it was haves and have-nots, and that's an ego thing. That's like, how can you trust the man next to you just because he's making more than you? Like, I could care less what your bank account is. It's, hey, man, you're going to pick up that defensive end coming off the edge, right? Like, you're going to make sure you got your job. I'm looking in the box. I ain't going down there, but y'all handle it in there. I'll run my route. Like, I think that's upsetting because, like you said, like Locke said, if you're a 4-win football team, you have to really, really look and see what went wrong. And to have the head coach say, man, I've lost the locker room, that is a gut punch. That's a gut punch. And it's also, if you're a Maryland football player, you got to look yourself in the mirror and it's like, what did I do wrong, or what can I do better to make sure that this doesn't happen again?
Look, we're not going to spend time like breaking down Maryland's roster.
Right, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's not going to be what we do here, but they had what you would consider to be a mass exodus.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they had guys leaving from all over the place. You name it. Their quarterback left. They had multiple receivers left. They had their top receiver he graduated. Ton of new faces on defense. They make 2 switches at coordinator. A wave of starters transferred out. It's kind of insane when you really think about their best players and how they've all gone elsewhere. But when you look at where the world of college football is, this is kind of the devil in the details world that we're living in. And it's awesome. Let me make sure that's understood. It's amazing that guys are getting paid. But when your coach has to put a sign outside the locker room. Did y'all see what this sign said? It's the best sign ever. I want this sign. I'm going to put it, we don't have Louis belts in our house, but I might get one. I'm going to take it off and just set it right there in the garage before I walk in the house. He put a sign up that says you can leave your Louis belts, your car keys, and your financial statements outside this locker room because when you enter those doors, we all pay the same price for success or failure.
Boom.
I love that.
That's a real quote right there.
I love that.
That's some real ball talk right there.
But you have to, these coaches, they've talked about this a while, man. Like, if you rely too heavily on the transfer portal, if you recruit the wrong guy, like, how often do you hear these coaches and we sit there and say, all right, whatever, it's nonsense. Like, come on, that's nonsense. I'm not buying it. You can have that. It's ridiculous, what have you. How often have we heard coaches say culture, we got to make sure we protect the culture. We have to go the extra mile nowadays to make sure our culture's strong because it's easier than ever for that culture to get off kilter.
Yep.
And culture wins and loses games. Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, everybody wants the best player. Everybody wants the 5-star. Everybody wants the guy that was highly recruited. I want the guy that wants to win and wants to do the right thing, because that's what's going to win you games against quality competition.
Yep. I agree with you 100%. You brought it up. You bring it up on occasion about that 2020 Alabama team where the culture of they wanted to play college football. They didn't. I mean, I understand the pandemic was going on, but they were meeting up, outside of the facilities and like, hey man, let's go run some routes. Let's go meet up and just throw the ball, get into that rhythm that it showed during the regular season when they were absolutely beating the brakes off people because everything was connected. Everybody was united of like, hey man, this is our job. This is what we need to do. This is the goal that we want to accomplish through a midst of adversity that nobody was prepared for.
Yeah.
And I agree with you 100%. Culture is built in that locker room, man. If I can't trust the guy that's next to me, how are we going to have success? Because, okay, like, I mean, offense, defense, they always, like, we have our little budding rivalries, whatever, with DBs, but I know, like, he's making me better, I'm making him better. But when, like you said, financial statements started coming involved and you're walking in with, an $8,000 chain, I come in with, a $20 dog tag, like, nobody's comparing all this stuff. Like, if those are the things that the kids and the players are worried about, then yes, you have a locker room issue 100%.
And it kind of showed, they went, like I said, personnel, actual personnel, they had plenty of talent.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the guys that were recruited off their roster to go elsewhere. Billy Edwards, let's start with the quarterback, was handpicked by Jeff Grimes at Wisconsin to be his guy. Could have gone and gotten a bunch of other guys too. No, he said, I like Billy Edwards' skill set. You look at some of the other pieces that have gone elsewhere, from defensive linemen to offensive linemen, guys that are just kind of all over the place. Like, it's not like they were lacking talent. They were not. They had 5 guys drafted, like I referenced. Top 4 in the Big Ten, top 11 nationally. That's a lot.
For a 4-win football team.
Of 22 starters, you have 5 that are going to play professional football?
That's big, man.
It doesn't seem like a lot to us when we're
Right.
used to seeing guys, 10, 11 guys off of roster getting drafted at Georgia or Bama or LSU. But in the Big Ten, for a middle-tier Big Ten team, to have 5 is a lot. So Locks clearly is recruiting really well, but now I think he's probably going to have to focus his attention on recruiting the right guys. Because if I have guys that are moved exclusively by the check they're getting, and it's about, hey, I got this,
Mm-hmm.
and that's solely the motivation, you're going to have some problems nowadays.
1,000%.
And you look back, and I want to take this and kind of spin it towards Alabama for a moment. Like, I think it was culturally, guys wanted to do right.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anyone was like trying to sink the ship by any stretch. No, absolutely not. But when guys are not all together and guys are not all pulling in the same direction, it's going to lead to inconsistent performance. Now, Maryland went 1-8 in the Big Ten. 1-8, 4-8 overall. Like, that ship sunk 100%. But even if you have just the littlest bit of fracturing, just the littlest bit of me first mentality, just the littlest bit of selfishness, just the tiniest bit, it can lead to wins and losses. Just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine when you got a team full of it, you go 4-8. You got a little bit of it, you go 9-3.
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't show up in the bowl game. And you look at that too at places kind of across the college football world. And that's not just at Alabama. Look at Auburn. I mean, Auburn had a handful of miscues last year, a game or two here or there, where maybe it's a different outcome if everybody's on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's no secret last year. People were butting heads, especially offensively, with what they were trying to do. It's no secret. Everybody could see that from afar. Just watch the games. I mean, coaches yelling at players, players yelling at coaches, like that. That can lead to losses.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Ole Miss last year. Ole Miss had no business losing to Kentucky at home. None. But were there a few guys out there that were kind of doing it for themselves? Probably. I don't know for sure. I'm not as dialed in to Ole Miss from an individual standpoint as I am to some of the other schools in the league, but I would imagine there are probably a couple guys that were kind of doing their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it led to maybe a play or two in a game against Kentucky that led to them actually coming up a little short. Like, your culture now is harder than ever to create, and it might be more important than ever. Like, let's think about the national champions from the last 4 seasons. Let's go 5 if we want to go that far back. We'll go back to 2020 with Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
All right, just go through it. Alabama in 2020, good culture, bad culture?
Great culture.
Phenomenal culture, right? Like,
Wonderful.
outstanding. All right, 2021 Georgia. Good culture, bad culture?
Good culture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, dudes wanted to kill each other. It's great.
Yeah.
Exactly what you wanted. Offense probably hated the defense. Defense probably hated the offense, but they're all boys when they got back into
on
the locker room.
Saturday. Yeah, exactly.
It's the best. 2022, Georgia,
Yep.
obviously.
Yeah, exactly. Rinse and repeat.
2023, Michigan.
Well, I mean, they kind of cheated a little bit, but
Say what you want. It was an us against the world mentality.
It was.
Everybody hates us.
Yeah.
I think that is
They were
valuable.
all on the same board. They were
all
the same
behind
way.
Sharon Moore. They were all in behind each other, all pulling the same direction. Whether you like how they got there or not, you have to acknowledge that the culture was really strong.
Mm-hmm.
It was really, really strong. And then last year, Ohio State. Yes, they lose a close one to Oregon in the regular season. Yes, they completely allow Michigan to dictate the tempo and everything in the game, and it led to them coming up short.
But after that, phew.
After that, it was all she wrote.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, hey, we're going to go show you now.
Yeah, that was a whole different football team after that.
Like, the 5 teams that have won the national championship the last 5 years, were they the most talented teams? I would say in 2020, yes. 2021, yes. 2023, no. 2022, probably, if we want to go Georgia that year as well. 2023, no. I wouldn't say Michigan was the most talented team. Ohio State last year, were they the most talented team? Perhaps, you know. But what gave them the extra sauce was that culture.
Mm-hmm.
Who are the teams that can create it this year? Who are the teams that can create it in the future? And can you create it with a bunch of guys that are, let's just call it what it is, picked up in the transfer portal?
Right.
Can you create that culture with transfer portal? I think it's harder to do it. It can be done. I just think it's a whole heck of a lot harder to do it because you didn't grow up at that place.
Yep.
Like, when I grew up in Dallas and I moved to Alabama, I had some culture shock. And it took me like 6 months to be like, all right, this is what I'm supposed to wear to parties. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know. I didn't know. Like, probably not going to wear white tennis shoes. Like,
No.
it just wasn't. Like, all right, that's cool. Like, probably not going to put product in my hair. Cool, no problem. Like, it just took me a little while to figure that out. Like, little things, but yeah.
Yeah. Did you start going to parties with like your cowboy hat? You going full Dallas?
Not
when you
often
walked in?
cowboy hat, no. I did wear cowboy boots, and I realized you don't wear cowboy boots. You wear Red Wings, and I wore Red Wings after that.
Gotcha.
Work boots, which is great. They're super comfortable.
It changed
I didn't have to worry
everything.
about them getting dirty. It was fantastic. It's the greatest thing ever. I think I wore them for 5 straight years. They were the best.
Durable.
Super durable. Super durable. But it's just interesting.
Yeah, I do have something I want to talk about after the break as far as when it comes to culture. I want to keep that conversation going on the other side. Keep it locked right here on Jox and McElroy and Cubelic in the morning.
Welcome back, McElroy, Cubelic. Good morning on Jox. Damian about to ask some questions about culture here in just a moment. Before we do, I know the culture is great at Bill Smith Buick GMC. They're the GMC Dealer of the Year, the national champs. You don't win national championships without phenomenal culture. That's what they have at Bill Smith Buick GMC. Andy Cole and Jonathan Yeager go the extra mile to make sure your experience buying a vehicle is on another level. It's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, the experience that you get when you take the short drive up to Coleman, go yourself a GMC Sierra 1500 SLT. It's a beautiful truck, excellent trim, $14,000 off the sticker. You'll spend just over $53,000 when in other places you might be spending all the way up to about $67,000. It's amazing the deals that you get. That's why 75% of their business repeat customers is because you have a better experience when you shop with Bill Smith. So take the short drive up to Coleman. You'll be glad you did. You can also shop online, have it delivered right to your driveway at BillSmithBuickGMC.com. All right, Damian, what are your questions, my friend?
It's kind of I wouldn't necessarily say it's a question, but kind of when you talk about culture, I think of a team last season where even going into the season, everybody had their worries, had their question marks. But I think when you have the conversation of how a culture, like if you give it time, the culture will present itself in the way that they play. It's the Florida Gators with Billy Napier.
Yeah.
Everybody looked at the schedule last year and it's like, I don't know, man. If Billy can find a way to get 5, 6, maybe. But then when the season kicked off, it's like, oh, okay, this Florida team is a little bit different. I mean, they took Georgia wire to wire. They knocked off LSU, knocked off Ole Miss there in the swamp. So it's okay if you give him time, you see exactly what could happen in the future. It gives you that little bit extra of optimism, especially going into this season. And I think that he's a great example of blocking out the outside noise. And at a place like Florida, where when he first got hired, it's like, how are we going to get somebody out of the Sun Belt to come into the SEC and figure this thing out? And that's all he's done since he's been there. And I think it's one of those things where when I look at Lane Kiffin now, and when you talk about the transfer portal of how to get guys, okay, are you sacrificing culture for talent, or are we sacrificing talent for culture? And I think Shane Beamer is in that category too with South Carolina, where he does not care who is across from him and his squad. He truly feels game after game, week after week, play after play, we can win and we can be effective in doing this. And I just think that culture is extremely important. It's just people and the way college football is, because everything is so fast, you expect it as soon as they get there. Like, it's hard for people to truly be patient and let this thing build out. And I think Florida and what Billy Napier has done is a great example of that.
Well, I think, but much to the chagrin of Florida fans, like they were super frustrated. Why don't you just go to the portal and stockpile the roster with a bunch of 5-star guys? And he's done it, I think, in a little bit more methodical way. I don't think it's easy for people to wait nowadays. Like, I don't think it's easy for people to sit there and say, yeah, we're cool with losing, because I know in time it's going to be good, because if you lose momentum. And in the perception of many, you lose, your momentum dies, your program dies. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think high school recruiting is still the end-all, be-all. Billy's prioritized that. He's done a good job of taking some pieces in the portal that were a little overlooked. Like, no one talked about Ricky Pearsall coming over from Arizona State, became a great player. Not a lot of people were talking about Montrell Johnson at running back, who came with them from Louisiana and ended up being a fantastic addition. Like, I mean, if you look at kind of where they're at, it was not they've not just exclusively lived by way of the high school recruiting. They've had a few that have come in from the portal, and they've all fared quite well. But I think culture is so important. I wish fans were a little bit more willing to wait, knowing that in time it'd be much better. Let's use Clemson as an example. Like, Clemson and Dabo Swinney have long said, we're not playing this game. Like, we're not going to get into the portal run. I'm going to reward the guys on our team. We're going to have great retention. We'll have a few guys transfer out every once in a while, but that'll be the anomaly, not the norm. We're going to just do everything we can to lean into being the more cohesive team every week, and we're going to go get high school guys that fit us and fit what we do and want to get in line and be the next man up and take their and wait their turn. And when that opportunity presents itself to become a difference maker, by all means. But it's definitely been frustrating for Clemson fans. And should it have been? Perhaps, when the expectations are to win 10-12 every year. But it's now going to pay off this year, maybe with a national championship run. I mean, they can do it. So as a guy that lived in a culture era and whose national championship team was built on culture, I'm glad to see it still works. You know what I mean? Like, I want it to continue to be like that. I just don't know if it will, because I don't know if the fans will allow it to be, because they don't want to wait for success.
Rome wasn't built in a day. And I shout out to Mike Locksley too for admitting that, like, hey,
no doubt,
this is like, we have a problem. We had a problem here last year, and to know,
without calling anybody out too.
Exactly.
That's not easy to do.
Exactly. Didn't say any names, any play. He just said, like, hey, the locker room was fractured. It was broken. That's the reason why, on top of, we didn't play cohesive football, and that's exactly why our result was the way that it was. But going into 2025, he knows, like, yes, that's the first place we got to address everything. And if you are a Terrapin, everybody's wearing the same colors, we're wearing the same cleats, we're going out there doing exactly what we need to do, but we're doing it as one.
No doubt. And I love that Locke said that, and I hope it works out well for him. I mean, he attacked it head on, and I hope they can get back. And they have won 3 bowl games out of the last 4 years. They've done some good things. Getting to a bowl game is no easy task, and hopefully things can lighten up a little bit for them as they move forward and they can continue about their winning ways. All right, when we come back, Tom Lugenville will join us on the other side, talk a little ACC, talk a little UFL. We'll have a lot of things to hit with Lugs here in a moment on Mac and Q. Midway point here on Mac and Cube, Wednesday edition, midway point of the week. It's hump day. So only just, 7.5 more hours of radio here the rest of the week. So we got to get in, got some great guests coming up. Adam Rittenberg coming up in a half hour. John Wilner, 1 hour from now, talk a little Big Ten. But right now, we get to my good friend Tom Lugenville, who is live from Charlotte, ACC Media Days. Lukes, what's going on, my friend?
Good morning, pal. How you doing?
I'm good, bud. Thanks for being here.
You bet.
I thought about having you and Dave on at the same time, but he's in Madison, Wisconsin. So
Wisconsin?
yeah, he's drinking spotted cows up in Wisconsin. Look, we'll talk quickly though before we get to the ACC. I just want to kind of get your perception. Hyper local here, Birmingham Stallions, sounding like they're going to be on their way out of Birmingham. The 4 markets that they've already announced are Orlando, Boise, Columbus, and either Louisville or Lexington.
Yeah.
I mean, you've done these games here in Birmingham, and you've been around the XFL and the UFL for a while. What's your impressions about the reorg, about where the league's heading?
Well, I don't think they have any choice at this point, and unfortunately, it's just the way it is. And I've always found it so interesting that the Birmingham market, it's been tried so many times. Going back to the World League of American Football back in the 70s and then coming back into the 90s, and we've seen these different iterations, and it just doesn't work. And it doesn't matter if you're winning or losing or somewhere in between. And it's always been a head scratcher to me. And I do think the market of Louisville and Columbus will be very interesting. Obviously, it's been tried in Florida with mixed results. I just don't know. I get the Memphis move. That makes total sense. But the Houston one's interesting to me because, and you'll remember this, our very last game before COVID hit in 2020, we had Houston, and I don't know if you recall this, but it was the first week they decided to open the upper deck at the stadium because they were packing them in, and they were the premier team in the league. They were playing really well. I kind of feel like if you win in Houston, there's been some proof in the pudding that they'll show up, but they haven't been overly successful the last couple of years. And so I think it's just a matter of maybe having some fresh blood and some fresh markets, and we'll see where it goes. I just feel like the league's at a point where they've got to try and invigorate some energy.
Yeah, I'm with you as we visit with Tom Lugenville, and that's kind of my thing. It's like I don't know if spring football's here to stay. I hope it is. I want it to. But I think attendance needs to increase if it's going to make sense financially. So here's hoping that it will, and it's just unfortunate it won't be here in Birmingham. Luke's moving on to the ACC. You're at ACC Media Days. You've had a chance to visit with some surrounding the ACC. I'm curious to think kind of where they're at right now. Just all things considered, where is the ACC right now in kind of the court of public opinion? How do they feel about their standing in the ecosystem of college football?
Well, I think so much of that revolves around the 6 big non-conference games that the conference is going to be involved in the first couple of weeks of the season. They have to go out and win those games. They have to create a narrative change. They got to create positive momentum. It's critical for the league, and I think the league knows that. I think the teams know that. Those games are important, and if you can do that, I think it sets the tone a little bit. I think there's some positive momentum within the league revolving around the quarterback play, which, if you got a guy, you've got a chance. And, we know SMU does, Clemson does, potentially, Miami with Carson Beck. CJ Bailey had a great freshman year at NC State last year. And, I think that can carry some of the weight because quarterback play is so important. What I think is going to be interesting is how a team like SMU responds to the 2024 season. You go from being the hunter to the hunted. You wildly exceed expectations. You make the college football playoff, and the entire offseason, everybody's telling you how good you are. You've arrived. They're patting you on the back. do they handle that well? You look at their schedule. They have now Miami and Clemson joining the regular season. Didn't have them last year, and their two non-conference are Baylor and TCU. So I think there's tremendous pressure on SMU to show that they're not a one-hit wonder and can continue to rise within the ranks of the conference. And then you need Florida State to rebound, and you need Miami to turn the corner and not mismanage games and start to play Miami style of defense. If you can get those teams to start getting after it and playing to the level that people expect, then I think it gives the top third of the league some really good football teams.
Looking at I kind of get beyond Miami and Clemson. I kind of know what they are. I think they're both going to be national championship contenders. People might push back on Miami. I think they're going to be that good. It's the next tier that you just referenced that I'm having a hard time with. Like, what is realistic for Florida State? What is realistic for SMU? What is realistic for Louisville? Even though I think
Georgia
their schedule's absurd. I mean, what is the ceiling for those teams this year?
Well, I think the good news for a team like Georgia Tech, a team like Louisville, a team like SMU, I think you have a high ceiling because you're going to have pretty stable quarterback play and maybe in a couple of instances, outstanding quarterback play. I think this is Brent Key's best team that he's had in Atlanta. They're obviously investing in the program for the first time ever. They're going to have two coordinators making seven figures. I think they're a top five spent money on coaching staff in college football. So they're trying to do the right things. Now they've got to get the results on the field, and I think the schedule helps them for the first time in Brent Key's tenure. I would expect for them to be an 8+ win team. They should be. I think there isn't an excuse for them not to be. I like the addition of Miller Moss at Louisville. I love the running back in Isaac Brown. They're going to be loaded at wideout with Chris Bell and Colin Lacey. Can they get back to playing the defense they played 2 years ago? And I think they're going to need to do that because, as you referenced, a big schedule there for Louisville. But I think they're an 8+, potentially 9-win type of team. And I think with SMU, there's so many positives. There's so much of a trend because of the investment they've made, the money the program and the institution has and is willing to invest. And they've made good decisions in recruiting, and they've made good decisions in the transfer portal. There's a lot of pieces of the puzzle, though, that have to come into play on defense. They've got the best tight end room, maybe in college football as a collective group. Kevin Jennings, I think, will take another step, and obviously was the difference in the football team a year ago. And so, I think, and it doesn't apply just to the ACC, Greg. I think it applies to everybody in college football. Is because of the transactional nature of the sport now, and we're seeing rosters being spread thin, and we're seeing talent dispersed. This thing is going to become more and more of a one-possession game type of league. And who's the team that cannot shoot themselves in the foot? Who can win by a field goal? Who cannot be penalized? Who cannot turn the ball over? Who can manage the game late? I think that's a big question mark with Miami, right? How do you win games late by not mismanaging the game, which they've had a history of doing? And I think you're going to see a ton of one-possession games in the ACC. And if talent is close, who finds a way to win and finish late?
Well, it should be very, very interesting. If that's what it becomes, then fantastic. I hope that's what it becomes, because it has not been that way in a long time. But it's almost entirely dependent on the teams like Pitt, almost entirely dependent on the teams like Duke and
Syracuse.
Well, I think Syracuse comes back to earth in a big way this year, but that's
I
partly
agree
because
with
of the schedule. I mean, goodness gracious alive. It's absurd.
Yeah, and they're not sneaking up on anybody this time around.
No, absolutely not. And the schedule is absolutely outrageous. You look at North Carolina, though, on the other hand, like, I don't think North Carolina personnel-wise is going to be very good, but their schedule is, like, absurd. They get Clemson at home, they're at Syracuse, they're at NC State, and they get Duke. Every other game is winnable. I'm amazed at discrepancy in schedules in this league, maybe more than any other, is that you can really play. If you catch the bottom half of the league on your schedule, you got a real shot to make a run. And, man, maybe that team is North Carolina. How do you feel about their personnel?
I think the personnel for them is average, probably at best. I think they know that. I think there's still a quarterback battle to be had there between Max Johnson and Gio Lopez. I think there's an assumption that Gio Lopez is just going to be the guy. I don't know if it's going to be that easy. I totally agree with you on the schedule there. And the issue is, how does the program and the team handle the attention that is coming their way? Because let's call it what it is. We're going to treat North Carolina the way we treated Colorado the last 2 years.
No doubt.
And they, whether they deserve it or not, or should be in the limelight or not, or should be in a certain broadcasting window, they're going to be there. And so, how does that team handle that? I'll tell you the other team that's in the same boat as you just referenced. It's Virginia. Virginia doesn't play any of the big boys.
No.
And I'm not saying they're in a position to make a huge leap, but I think Chandler Morris will stabilize the quarterback position. The vast majority of their defense is back. There's no reason why they shouldn't be bowling and be a 7-win type of team if Chandler Morris can stay healthy, because they get the benefit of essentially having SMU's schedule a year ago.
It's crazy. I looked through it the other day. I mean, they got to be way better on defense. But Virginia, they're going to score. And maybe they brought in 1 million guys along the portal, out of the portal along the defensive line. So, it's not a bad place to start, but defensively, they were just so bad last year.
Yeah.
But I am optimistic that if it becomes a shootout, they could be in position. Who's the team we're not talking enough about? I kind of lean Pitt, partly because I feel like last year when Eli Holstein got hurt at the midway point, they kind of lost some of that momentum. But they bring back a decent contingent. The offensive line, I think, needs to maybe take a step. But I think Cade Bell's system can kind of coach around it. The schedule's tough, but Pitt's kind of that team that's kind of flying under the radar in my eyes. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, listen, I actually had the game where the wheels came off against SMU on the road. And they never recovered. They were 7-1 or 7-0. I can't remember what it was. And they were playing really good football, and everything was clicking. The offensive line just went to shambles, and then Eli Holstein couldn't get protected, and everything else just fell apart. I do think they'll rebound. I think they'll be better. I'm going to say this because I think it is just so typical of this program. But any time you're not talking about NC State,
right,
is when NC State plays well. That quarterback is a dude, and he played really well, C.J. Bailey, under very difficult circumstances last year, and they returned like 18 starters. And nobody's talking about it. And generally, in this conference, that's exactly when Dave Doran goes out and rips off a 9 or a 10-win season. And I would be looking at them as being a team that you got to watch out for just because nobody's paying attention.
Yeah, I love their tight end too. Joe Lee's
a really good player.
He's a dude.
Yeah.
We called C.J. Bailey's first start. It was against Clemson, so it was tough sledding. But it was, all right, this guy's got some game. And, whether or not he takes that step is huge. New defensive coordinator, though, DJ Elliott, is now calling the plays after Tony Gibson's out. Are they going to kind of reinvent themselves defensively? What do they want to be?
It's a great question. You go back and you look at DJ Elliott's history, and a lot of it's been in a 3-man front alignment. We know, as you and I know, we called him before with Tony Gibson, it was line up and play cat coverage, and we're gonna live and die by it, and we're gonna come after you. I don't know. I think they might be a little more tempered. So much I think of defensive football now is you're gonna give up yards, right? You're gonna give up plays. Can you get off the field in the red zone? Can you force field goals and get a couple of extra possessions a game? Because I think offensively, almost their entire unit is back. And so I think they will take another step there. But it's going to be interesting because DJ Elliott's bounced around a little bit, and he had to take a step back for a while after being a coordinator and then getting back into just being a position coach. And now he's got another opportunity to re-energize his career. And, traditionally that's been a program that has produced really high-level defensive football players that have produced. And so that's what they got to get back to doing, because last year that was not a Tony Gibson style defense that they played with last year.
Far from it. It was disgusting at times. It really was.
Especially in the game you had.
Oh my God. It was brutal. All right, last one, Luke. So get you out of here. Clemson by a decent margin, or is the gap close between them and Miami?
I think that Clemson is probably the most well-rounded. If you went position by position and said, okay, who's either got the best starters or maybe the best two deep or depth, I think I'd lean slightly towards Clemson. And you got to give Dabo Swinney a lot of credit, because with all of the weight of the pressure of you got to get into the portal, you got to do this, you got to be a part of the revolving door. And he says, no, we're going to evaluate, recruit, and retain. Then we're going to reward through NIL players within our own roster. So now we're going to avoid defections and avoid departures. And as a result, he now has himself a highly experienced, highly talented team where across the board, because he didn't deviate from the past, is the reason why he's sitting in the position he's in right now. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Great stuff, Lugs. Always appreciate your time, man. Have a great day today and look forward to watching.
You bet, man. Best to you. See ya.
All right, Tom Lugenville joining us here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, live from ACC Media Days in Charlotte, North Carolina. Great breakdown there. Kind of went all over the board, went with some underdogs, went with some favorites, hit Clemson, hit Miami, hit NC State, who's, I think, a really good candidate as a sleeper this year. So great visit, and look forward to watching ACC coverage on ACC Network today. I also look forward to the coverage I'm going to get from Wes and the guys at Polar Bear Services. They can just do so many things for you around your house. I never get concerned with anything that pops up, and believe me, stuff pops up all the time at our house. It just is what it is. I just know I can make one phone call to Weston and the guys at Polar Bear Services, and we get the situation taken care of. They're the experts in heat, air, plumbing, and electrical, especially now with the hot summer months. We're grinding all throughout the Southeast. If I have something that pops up with my air conditioning, I just call Wesson. They get a guy out, and they get the job done. So remember, if you have a problem with your electrical, plumbing, heat, or air, just pick up the phone and call the Bear. It's 205-497-BEAR. That's 497-BEAR. I want to expound a little bit more on NC State, and I also want to dive a little bit more into another team that I think can make a legitimate run in the ACC towards playoff candidacy. We'll talk about them next on Mac and Cube. Mac and Cube, final segment here, hour number 2, 8:53 here in Birmingham, Alabama. Appreciate Tom Lugenville a moment ago. Kind of going through the ACC. Look, he likes NC State, thinks they're flying under the radar. I can kind of understand why. They get a lot of pieces back. That team just really didn't resemble what Dave Doran's been in the past, the last couple of years. Tough, physical, great line of scrimmage team. Not a team you want to play against. Kind of a unique defensive scheme that was very aggressive and could cause a lot of problems. They've just lost a lot of pieces. I mean, there's a couple of guys actually playing in the SEC that originally started their career at NC State, but now they're going to kind of change who they are. They're going to be a little bit more program development as opposed to going out and trying to exist in the transfer portal world. Dave Doran said, nope, that's not good for our culture. We're going to go back to doing it the way we've always done it. If we lose a couple games here and there because of it, so be it. I kind of respect that, but their success this year is going to hinge completely on CJ Bailey's development. He's a true freshman last year. A lot of really positive moments. He's really the first returning starting quarterback for NC State in quite some time. They've been running through the gamut the last few years where they've had a guy for a year, he gets hurt, had a guy go in, he transfers, had a guy transfers, guy transfers in, he gets hurt. It's like they have not had continuity at quarterback in a really long time. So hopefully they can build around CJ Bailey and make a legitimate run. The other team, though, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday, is North Carolina. And if you are one that doesn't want a team to get covered unnecessarily, you really need TCU to win that game week 1. Because if, for whatever reason, North Carolina wins that game against TCU, they have Clemson at home. That'll be one of the most highly watched games, I would imagine, in the ACC next year. They're at Syracuse, whose preseason win total is 5.5. They're at NC State, who we've already documented is dangerous. It's also on the road. And that's a rivalry game. It's the end of the regular season, though, so they could have just one loss going into that one, potentially, maybe 2. Who knows? They get Duke at home. Guys, there are not very many hurdles on this team, on this roster. They don't play Florida State. They don't play Miami. They don't play Louisville. They don't play SMU. They do get Clemson, but it's at home. If they beat TCU, guys, they could have one loss at the end of the regular season. So if you didn't like the coverage that, or the amount of attention that Colorado got a couple of years ago, if you were kind of annoyed by, they haven't played anybody. They're not, and we don't know how good they are. Well, that's what you might get with North Carolina if TCU doesn't take care of us week 1. I don't care what happens. I think it's great for TV. So I'm okay with them winning that game. But if you don't want unnecessary coverage, you need TCU to win. Adam Rittenberg's next on Mac and Cube. Welcome back. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, hour number 3, as we continue to move along here on a Wednesday edition of Mac and Cube. Really a lot of fun so far. First 2 hours of the show, you can find them anywhere on the podcast. You can stream it, joxfm.com. Download the podcast, rate the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. These shows are cut up hourly, so you can listen to anything we did in the first 2 hours there by going to the podcast. Talked a little Stallions, talked a little ACC, talked a lot of Big Ten. I think the Big Ten's highly intriguing this year, and to help us break it down, we bring in Adam Rittenberg. Does a tremendous job on ESPN.com. He is out there at Media Days in Las Vegas. Adam, I appreciate you cutting your night a little short for us. I know the craps table is hot, so for you to walk away to do this interview, it's very, very much appreciated, my friend.
Yeah, I don't need to go to any sort of rehab program. I just come on with Greg McElroy in the morning, and it keeps me in as a good boy here in Vegas.
Yeah, we're the cooler. That's what we are. That's exactly what we are here at Jox 94.5. But it's a fascinating time in the Big Ten, Adam, and I'm really curious what you thought about Tony Petitti's comments yesterday. I thought there was a lot of really good things in there. And it sounds like there is some common ground. It sounds like maybe we're not as much at odds as we originally thought after listening to Brent Yormark in the Big 12 and Greg Sankey last week. It sounds like maybe we're a little closer than we thought, and there can be some common ground found when it comes to future playoffs and future scheduling formats. So what were some of your biggest takeaways yesterday?
Well, it was really the first chance to hear from Tony Petitti publicly on, a format that has been widely reported for a while, that he's really favored. And, the Big Ten, and talking to Tony and a number of the coaches and athletic directors, they're very united around this format that includes a lot of automatic qualifiers. And, their rationale is it will help the regular season. It will encourage, stronger out-of-conference scheduling. The Big Ten out-of-conference scheduling has gotten worse at a time when its teams are winning national championships. Both of the teams, Ohio State last year and Michigan in 2023, won national championships without playing a non-conference a game against another Power 4 opponent. So, they don't feel the need to increase scheduling, especially with 9 conference games every year, if they're going out and winning the national championship. So that was part of the argument. Certainly, mentioning all the teams that would still be in play if they could have a season that leads into a play-in weekend. So you don't just have a championship game; you have 2 other games that would determine a college football playoff spots. And so, I would hope that they're closer, Greg, than it seems. I know that obviously the Big 12 and ACC have been adamant that they want the 5-11 format. Tony Petitti was very clear yesterday that any format that puts more work and power in the selection committee's hands is not one that would currently get much support in the Big Ten. And he's not anti-selection committee. He just doesn't believe that they can do an adequate enough job with so many differences, league to league, schedule to schedule. So I do think one thing that the Big Ten didn't say explicitly, but in hearing this behind the scenes, if no one's going to come aboard into this heavily AQ format, the 4-4-2-2-1 or whatever they're calling it, the Big Ten is going to put its foot down as far as number of conference games. They just don't believe it's fair to have that type of format with so many at-larges, and you have differences in the different scheduling models from one league to the next. I think they're going to really push for more uniformity in scheduling,
which I can totally get on board with. I've been begging for scheduling uniformity for years. And have no problem with it. I don't think the FCS games are good for college football, personally. I think you want to put a great product on the field every single time you tee it up. Your brand's at stake. So playing games that are not competitive and in some cases not safe are not ideal for the greater good of college football. What can the Big Ten do to force the hands of the ACC, Big 12, and the SEC, though? When those 3 are united, and I know the SEC is ultimately the one that will make the decision because they have more power than the other 2, but if those 3 are united, what can the Big Ten do to force the SEC into playing 9 conference games?
Well, I think it would just say, hey, we're going to stay at 12 teams, and maybe everybody's okay with that, but certainly if you're Brett Yormark or Jim Phillips, or especially Brett Yormark, you only had 1 team in the playoff last year. You don't have any historic elite brands in your conference. And you want more spots if you're him. You want to have more of a presence in this playoff going forward. Again, if you're Greg Sankey, you're similar. You have so many fan bases, as you know, that believe that they have teams that are capable of getting to the college football playoff, and more spots would mean more opportunities. And so I think that's where the Big Ten is at. If they're not going to get widespread support for their model, again, Kirk Cignetti told me yesterday that he thought the SEC was fully in until their spring meetings when they obviously rallied more around the other model. But if that's the case, if they're at a stalemate, I think the Big Ten's preference is to just keep going forward with 12 teams. It worked out really well last year, obviously, for the conference. I think they played in 11 of the 14 playoff games. And we'll see what happens at that point. But I think then the ball is back in the SEC's court. There's just a feeling, Greg, here that, hey, we are aligned with coaches and athletic directors, and this is a conference in the Big Ten that's not going to get pushed around by its coaches. I got the sense in talking to some people, even some people who had spent time in the SEC previously, they feel the SEC is a league that's pushed around by its coaches, that the SEC was actually on board with this format. And then, whoever it is, you could name a coach in the SEC, certainly some guys have been there longer than others, got them away from a format that both of these leagues were aligned on.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. It would not surprise me whatsoever. I think the conference, in a perfect world, wants better inventory. Better inventory leads to more money. More money leads to more resources and opportunities for these teams to continue to elevate. I think the conference 100% would be on board with 9 conference games. But I don't think the coaches are willingly going to sign up for 4 more losses in the league. As we visit with Adam Rittenberg, senior writer at ESPN, ESPN.com. You can see his work on ESPN Plus and all over the place. Adam, what do you think is kind of the next step for the Big Ten? Because I feel like the league is extremely top-heavy, whether it's Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, whatever order you want to have them in. I think there's a slight gap there, and then you have the likes of Michigan, USC. I think USC is going to be really good. I might be alone in that mindset, but I'm a believer. Too many close calls last year to not potentially get over the hump this year. Indiana's in that mix. How many legitimate playoff contenders do you see in this league this year?
Right. Well, I think you certainly there's that top 3, and then it's who else joins them, and I think that's going to be really the story of the Big Ten season, because, like you said, it was so stratified last year with the 4 that made it in. Illinois obviously got to 10 wins, and they weren't that far away from making the playoff, but no one really had them as a serious contender for much of the season. So I think ideally the Big Ten has 6 or 7 teams that are in that mix, maybe for 4 spots this year, as opposed to, last year when you were really banking on Indiana not stumbling to be that 4th team to get into the CFP. You mentioned USC and Michigan. What's so fast, I think for the Big Ten to be at its best as a conference, its historic powers have to perform to their capabilities. And one thing that really held the Big Ten back for so many years was Michigan's underperformance. And then Michigan started to perform, and they ended up winning a national championship. Last year, they fell back a bit record-wise. Can they get, back into the mix of being a nationally relevant program from a postseason standpoint? USC has never been in the playoff. It has been a disappointment under Lincoln Riley. But maybe isn't that far away, as you mentioned. If they play better football away from home, or away from this city where they ironically won 2 games against SEC programs last year, they will be a team that we're talking about for the playoff. Indiana, made it last year, and I thought did really well with retaining its top players. They had several of those guys here yesterday, and then they add a guy like Fernando Mendoza, one of the top available quarterbacks in the portal. They brought in several offensive linemen with starting experience, including Pat Coogan, who we all remember from his pregame speeches for Notre Dame last year. Illinois retained its best players, including quarterback Luke Altmaier, who was certainly on Tennessee's wish list and could have moved on, and he's back. And they won 10 games last year. And then who will join them? Will it be Iowa? Will it be a team that we're not talking about? Maybe Washington, that made the national championship game not that long ago, and I think we'll have a sneaky good team this year. But I really think it's important for the Big Ten to have, its historically elite programs, including the one that it added from Los Angeles and USC, start to be performing to those capabilities, because it's just been a really long time since we talked about USC as a playoff contender and a national championship contender.
It's been forever, and it wouldn't surprise me if you look at last year, to have the lead in 4 games that you ultimately lost, but you had the lead in the fourth quarter. That's almost hard to do. So hopefully for Lincoln Riley and Trojan fans everywhere, it gets flipped. That kind of middle bottom tier, those teams kind of 8 to 12, the Wisconsins of the world, the Iowas of the world, the Minnesotas of the world. Is there really upward mobility there? I feel like in the SEC, there really is. We saw it last year from South Carolina. You can go from, say, 13th to 4th or 3rd, depending on how things shake out. But I feel like in the Big Ten, it's way harder to elevate. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that they don't recruit at that level, just generally, those types of programs. You've seen what South Carolina and Shane Beamer has been able to do, not surprising given his background, to elevate South Carolina's recruiting efforts in the state and in the portal and elsewhere. You just don't see Minnesota, for example, truly pop in recruiting, but they've done a great job of developing players that have some talented guys coming back. Darius Taylor's a really strong running back. Coy Parrish, he's one of those guys that might be part of this Travis Hunter effect, that he can play both ways and is going to have a bigger role on offense this year. And they believe Drake Lindsey, who is a highly sought after player in the state of Minnesota, can be, the quarterback that leads them forward. So we'll find that out. I think Iowa of that group is the closest. I mean, they haven't been that far away from the 12-team playoff if it had existed, a few years ago. Their issues have obviously been on offense. It's well documented, but they brought in a guy in Mark Gronowski from South Dakota State who won an FCS national title, had a ton of experience at that level. And if he can transition up to the Big Ten level before he goes on to a pro career, that could be the missing piece for an offense that was a little bit better last year and could be even much better this year. Iowa's not far away because of the way they defend, the way they play special teams. They don't hurt themselves. They're a really tough home team, and they have some huge home games this year, including Oregon coming in to Kinnick Stadium. So that would be the team I would watch for, that always develops NFL-type talent. And if they can just improve a little bit on offense, they'll be a team I think that we're talking about as a fringe playoff contender.
Yeah, it will be really interesting to watch as we finish up here with Adam Rittenberg. You can follow him at ESPN Rittenberg on X. He's senior writer of college football for ESPN. The top of the league feels very, very clear. I think Penn State's the team to beat. They have the most pieces back. I, however, am always going to find it difficult to trust Penn State. I've just been burned too many times. I've picked them countless times against Ohio State, only to be kind of left at the altar from time to time. Is this the year, Adam? Can they actually go and do it?
If it's not this year, you really question if it's going to happen under James Franklin's leadership, even though I would say James overall has done a tremendous job.
No doubt.
At Penn State with the consistency. I mean, people think it's hard to, or that it's easy to win, or you should win 10 games every year at Penn State. You really shouldn't win 10 games at almost any program, and that's hard to do, and he's been able to do it. But the big game problems are an issue, and as you know, having played quarterback, the coach and the quarterback are attached in that way. And when James Franklin hasn't won big games and Drew Aller hasn't won big games, that's going to be the question mark until they change it. I do believe that it's set up really well for them, with an incredibly easy non-conference schedule. It's been well documented, an open week, and then Oregon coming in. That's your big game. To Beaver Stadium at night. They shouldn't be overly banged up. They should be fresh. And you're playing a team that obviously you played in the Big Ten championship last year and actually did some really good things against. If you can't win that game, I think there's going to be some major problems because, in many times Penn State loses the big game having maybe comparable talent, but often slightly worse than like a team like Ohio State. this year, as you mentioned, the roster that they have coming back, the number of guys who really popped during the playoff run, thinking guys like the Nye Dennis Suttons, the Key Wheatley, those guys all showed out during the playoff. It has to be this year. If it's not this year, what are we doing, or what's still lacking other than the people that have been there a really long time? So I kind of love this situation because it's really clear. If Penn State doesn't win the Big Ten, doesn't make another deep playoff run, perhaps doesn't even win a national championship, there's going to be disappointment, and rightfully so, because of the way their roster's set up in State College.
Fascinating stuff. Adam, awesome job, man. Enjoy your time in Vegas, and we look forward to visiting again soon.
You bet. Thanks for getting me up early.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you getting up early for us. I think it's 7 there. It might be 6. I have no idea. Vegas is like its own planet. It might even be like 6:45. I don't even know how that works, but time zones, time zone stuff. 2.5 hours behind us, that makes sense. But Vegas, city that never sleeps for sure. But hopefully Adam got plenty of it last night, and we appreciate his time this morning. Of course, you can check out Adam Rittenberg at ESPN Rittenberg. You can check out his work on ESPN.com. He does a great job, along with many other writers there on the .com side. Just fantastic stuff, great access, and great information. All right, when we come back, we'll kind of make sense of what it was that he was talking about the conference scheduling agreements and where things could go from here. Really, really, really look forward to kind of diving into scheduling uniformity because I think that's coming. I have hope, and I'll tell you why next on Mac and Cube. We have some spiciness. Finally, we've been begging for it for weeks. It's been 2 weeks now, and there's been very, very little interaction between coaches the last couple of weeks. There's been little interaction between commissioners the last couple of weeks. We've had Big 12, we've had SEC, we've had ACC, we've had Big 10. And we just haven't had much like back and forth. Everyone's been on their best behavior, which is great. But also in this line of work this time of year, kind of like a little reaction, kind of like a little fodder, if you will. Rhett Lashley, who, by the way, knows the league, like has been around the league, has coached at Auburn, has coached at a few different places, like knows the area. He was pretty outspoken yesterday. He's the head coach of SMU. Pretty outspoken about where the SEC is and basically how there is a lack of depth in the SEC. Take a listen.
It really is every week. In the ACC, you can't have an off week or you're going to get beat. It doesn't matter if you're playing at Clemson. It doesn't matter if you're playing whoever that last place team is at home. If you have an off week, if you play like we did in the playoff game, you're probably going to lose. You know, I mean, look at our Duke game. That was a miracle we won. We went out and turned it over 6 times. We should have lost. And that was a good team. And so it's just a week in, week out. That's the league you want to be in. That's where you want to be. I mean, you look at our league, we had like 4 10-win teams, 2 playoff teams, a handful of 9-win teams, 13 bowl teams. I mean, there's just not a lot of easy wins on the schedule. And there's other leagues that claim depth. But like, the SEC's had the same 6 schools win the championship since 1964. The same 6. Not a single one has been different since 1964. It's top heavy to me. That's not depth.
Interesting. Now, I don't disagree when he says that at the tip top, like the tip top of the SEC, the top 2-3 teams, yeah, there's not a lot of variance in who wins the league. But answer me this. How many teams in the last 15 years have won the ACC? I know Pitt won it once. Other than that, I'm pretty sure it was Clemson and Florida State every other year, if I'm not mistaken. So they've had just 2 teams win on a regular basis, except for the year that Clemson kind of imploded and Florida State had a real down year as well. And that year, I think it was Wake Forest against Pitt. So I would argue that 6 doesn't seem like a lot. It's not bad. Not bad at all. The way I see it. I also look, too, in the depth of the league. And while I respectfully disagree with his assessment of Team 16 in the ACC could beat Team 1 in the ACC, I don't agree with that. Because if you look at last year, for example, Team 16 in the ACC was Florida State. They went 1-7 in the league. Stanford was 2-6. Stanford, however, they did beat Syracuse, who finished 4th. At home. So he's not entirely wrong. He's not entirely wrong, but I think more often than not, that is a bit of an anomaly. I think that can be said in any league nowadays. The best teams can lose to the worst teams if you don't play your best game. That's just the way things are because the best teams can no longer stack their roster the way they once were able to. There's more teams that are capable of playing. There's more teams that are capable of being competitive, and there's worse culture in a lot of places. So I think it's absolutely plausible.
Since Florida State got in the league, there have been 7 different teams to win the league.
7 that have won the league.
Including one that's no longer in the league in Maryland.
Who's that?
In Maryland. Who's
Merlin.
Absconded off to the
Merlin,
Big Ten.
like the wizard.
Yes.
Merlin. Mark Stoops had some pointed commentary to respond to this. And maybe I'm just a glutton for, you know what? I am just a glutton for just coaches' reaction to other coaches because when you're defending your league, like you can pick and choose whatever context you want to use to describe it. But Mark Stoops had this to say in response to Rhett Lashley describing the SEC as, quote, not deep.
If he wants to take a crack at it, come on, strap it on and come try it because I could promise you it's not easy. So I could tell you, I think anybody with any common sense can look at college football and look at our conference and know what it's all about. I mean, there's nobody interested in going back. Everybody's pushing the investment from the schools, the recruiting, the coaching, you name it. I mean, do we really have to defend ourselves at this point? It's just ridiculous to try to compare them top to bottom to the SEC. That's just a ridiculous quote.
I love that. It is a little ridiculous in my eyes. Like, you can acknowledge that Clemson, Miami, those teams can play with anybody. SMU last year, I think they could play with anybody. I really believe that. People don't think that because of what SMU's done traditionally in the last 30 years. But I think SMU was pretty dang good last year. You look at their personnel, their quarterback, their running back, legit, good along the defensive line, real good weapons at wide receiver. They actually lost their best wideout midway through the year. He was a tight end, former South Lake Carroll Dragon, I might add. But this is a team that was legit last year. But that is, to compare the depth of the SEC and the ACC, Damian, that's a pretty big difference.
Oh, 1,000%. Like, we don't have the Wake Forest of the world. We don't have the Stanfords in
Well, we
the
used
SEC.
to have the Wake Forest of the world. They
Yeah,
were Vandy, and they are no longer that.
Nope. Nope. But even Vandy sprinkled in a couple 8-9 win seasons. You know, when James Franklin was there, they've had their moments, but none bigger than what happened last year. But no, when it comes to the depth of the league, it's not even comparable.
I think it's really more team 5 through 12. That's where the depth is on display.
Mm-hmm.
Now, has South Carolina ever won an SEC? No, they haven't, but they're a handful.
Mm-hmm.
Has Arkansas ever won the SEC? No, but they've been a handful many, many times. Has Ole Miss ever won the SEC in its current format of, you know, 2 divisions and where it's at? No, they've never played in the SEC title game dating back to 1992, but they've been a handful, right? So, I mean, there have been teams that have been a handful. There have been new additions. A&M's had 11-win season in the league. Missouri's had a 10-plus win season in the league. Missouri's been to multiple SEC championship games. Like, there's been great depth. It just the tip top of the SEC, the Bamas, the Georgias, the Tennessees, the LSUs, they've been a cut above. Florida, there for quite a while, a cut above some of the other leagues, some of the other teams. Auburn in a couple of years, just a slight cut above the teams that would occasionally come out of the East and make a bit of a surprising run. So fascinating to hear from Mark Stoops there. In response, the league is just ridiculously deep, which is why when I teased it a moment ago, we're talking about 8 conference games versus 9 conference games. I absolutely 100% believe, and I don't think he'll ever say it. I don't think Greg Sankey would ever say it publicly because it would be doing a disservice to his league. But I think in a perfect world, he'd love to have 9 conference games.
Mm-hmm.
I, as a fan, want 9 conference games. I, as a broadcaster in the profession, want 9 conference games. Damian, would you rather have a more competitive game in the non-conference and potentially one more loss? Or would you rather play a team that you just roll the ball out there, play your backups, win by 30, and you're off and running the next week? What do you prefer?
I mean, I'm looking at it from the TV side of things. I would love for...
What a media guy now.
Right, you know it.
Wow.
Big corporate guy.
Such a media corporate guy. What a suit. Davian
I'm
Suits.
telling you, man. Hang around with Haney, it'll teach you some things. But no, I think that having a tougher non-con would be fine. More eyeballs on you. But as far as, you know, rolling out the FCS opponents, it's not necessarily the best product. But I would love to see, you know, a Big Ten versus SEC weekend. Like, make it a weekend thing where you have...
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, like you have kind of like we see in college basketball with the ACC versus SEC challenges and things like that. Like, I would love to see something to that magnitude in college football. Make it week 1.
That'd be incredible. Like, if they could do some type of non-conference kickoff weekend, it'd be absolutely amazing. But if the SEC, like, I don't blame the Big Ten for digging in.
Right.
If I were the Big Ten, I'd say, you guys don't play as many conference games as we do. And the SEC's going to say, well, we're better than y'all. And the Big Ten say, no, you're not. We're better than y'all. And then you are. No, we are. No, we have more money. We have bigger markets. Well, we have better talent. Like, okay.
Right.
Let's just play the same number of games. Like, let's just get it figured out. I mean, it's just this he said, she said, finger pointing, this person, that person. We're better. You're better. I'm better. It's just, I love it.
Me too.
I can't help it. I love it. I absolutely love it. I also love I love where Rhett Lashley stood from his vantage point. I love where Mark Stoops stood from his vantage point, because I can promise you, Mark Stoops' team, one of the worst in the league last year. And yet, there they were with their one conference game, keeping Ole Miss out of the college football playoff.
Yep.
Their one win in conference came against Ole Miss on the road. Still crazy to think about the outcome of that game. All right, when we come back, John Wilner will join the show. Does an amazing job. Traditionally covered the Pac-12. That was his. I mean, he is the guru when it comes to the Pac-12. Now the Pac-12 is no mas. We will ask him about the current version of the Pac-12, but I really want to ask him about SC and Oregon. That's what I'm most intrigued by. I'm also probably going to ask him about Washington because I think they're a sleeper in the Big Ten this year. So John Wilner joins us next on Mac and Cube. Welcome back, McElroy and Cubelic in the morning on Jox 934 here, Birmingham, Alabama. It's been fun here today. We've actually gotten out of the SEC for the most part, done a lot of ACC Media Days going on, done a lot of Big Ten, and our Big Ten coverage continues on. Before it does, the Alabama heat and humidity can be brutal. Don't let it affect your home and family. Keep them comfortable with affordable Train Cooling System. They've been recognized as America's most trusted brand 11 consecutive years, and they are official cooling partner here on Jox. It's hard to stop a train. All right, we welcome him in now. He's John Wilner. I don't think there's anyone that is more connected to West Coast college football. You can follow him on Twitter at Wilner Hotline. He's all over the place. You can see him, read him, listen to him all over the place. But check him out at Wilner Hotline on Twitter. That's where you can get a lot of the great information that John provides us on a daily basis. John, what's going on, my friend? How are you?
I'm good, Greg. How about yourself?
Terrific. Great seeing you a couple weeks back. It's a fascinating time right now for West Coast college football. I kind of want to focus mostly on the Big Ten, But I want to start by asking you about Arizona State. They'll play Mississippi State. A bunch of our fans here in the Southeast, they follow Mississippi State, and Arizona State travels to Starkville this year. Arizona State surprised the college football world this year, and it feels like they're coiled to spring and do it all over again in year number 3 for Kenny Dillingham. How realistic is it to expect them to repeat what they accomplished in 24?
I have wondered about that because so much of what worked for them was kind of based on the element of surprise, right? They weren't circled by their opponents, at least in the first half of the season. The locker room was basically playing with found money in a lot of ways because there was no pressure, no expectations. They were coming off a terrible season. They'd been hit hard by the NCAA. They had that bowl ban, and I think all that served to just create like this pressure-free environment for them. And now it's completely different. They were at Big 12 Media Days last week, 2 weeks ago, right? They were one of the big stories. They got a potential Heisman contender with Sam Levitt. The pressure's on, and that has a way of changing things. Even if you've got the same core players back, if the pressure's much higher, it'll be interesting to see how they respond. They've got the players and the talent to win the Big 12 again, but I just wonder if things are going to be a little bit tougher this time.
It certainly seems that way, but they absolutely have the pieces back, and hopefully they can elevate and make it competitive again. They've always been that team that we've described as a sleeping giant. No one's been able to do it back to back to back to back. It ebbs and flows. Hopefully Kenny Dillingham can unlock something there in Tempe. Let's move next, though, to the Big Ten. Oregon, they're a juggernaut. I don't really know what else to describe them as. I mean, they got tremendous resources. They've always had good coaching. I feel like they've had good coaching for 15, 20 years. Even their worst days under Mark Helfrich, they still had good coaching. Just didn't work out on the recruiting trail the way it's now working out for them. What's next for this program? What can they do this year to kind of elevate to the next level?
I think they need to win a few games in the playoff, right? They just won the Big Ten championship, and they were the number 1 seed, and they got run out of the Rose Bowl by Ohio State. To me, the next step for them is, I don't know if they got to get to the championship game, but I would think at least the semifinals, to be honest. And that's a pretty high bar, but that's where things are for them at this point. And they have got really good players. Once again, they're going to be relying on an inexperienced quarterback, for the first time after going through, using the transfer portal and getting veteran quarterbacks, Dylan Gabriel they had, and Bo Nix, of course. So we'll see if Dante Moore can provide that playmaking at quarterback on a consistent basis. But to me, it's, say CFP semifinals or bust.
Is it surprising to you that they transferred into the Big Ten and it was just as seamless as it was? Because I did not think it was going to be as easy for them. I thought physicality would be a bit of a learning curve there, and yet it was no problem whatsoever. They could match people physically, but they also had the skill on the perimeter to make life impossible for teams in the Big Ten that had traditionally not seen that skill outside of Columbus, Ohio. Was it at all surprising for you?
Maybe a little bit. They certainly seem to be, a year ago at this point, right? I don't know if they were picked to win the Big Ten, but certainly top 2 or 3. But they definitely had what it took at the line of scrimmage to compete in the Big Ten. And part of that's because they had a bunch of transfers. Some of those guys from the SEC country, they had recruited nationally, and they had 3 defensive linemen drafted. So I do wonder this year if they're going to be as good as they were on the line of scrimmage. But they were right from the start. They were of the 4 schools, they were by far the best positioned to enter the Big Ten and compete at a high level. The other 3, I think, are in various stages of being competitive.
It's hard to argue with that. With Washington's struggles last year, I think circumstantially it was impossible for all four of those teams, Michigan, Washington, Arizona, and Alabama, to have a new coach in when they did. The timing, I think it led to a little bit of a disjointed nature, but Washington found something as the season went along. And I'm of the belief that they are kind of one of the sleepers this upcoming year with their quarterback, Damon Williams, back, who did some really nice things down the stretch. What's realistic for Washington this season?
Well, I mean, they got a real soft non-conference schedule. So if you count 3 wins there, I wouldn't be surprised if they get 9 total, 9-3 season. They are better positioned this year than they were here. Jed Fish made a big point in the offseason about getting bigger and stronger on the lines of scrimmage. There were a few games where they were kind of overwhelmed. Illinois or Iowa, for one, they had no response for Iowa's running game. So that's, to me, that's the big thing for them. But Denzel Boston, Jonah Coleman, Damon Williams Jr. is a terrific, 1-2-3 combination at the skill position. So if they can play, hold their own up front, I think they're in much better shape. And USC is kind of in the same situation, right? Lincoln Riley trying to get better on defense, trying to get better at the line of scrimmage. So both of those schools, to me, have a chance to make a better showing in the Big Ten this year than they did last year.
Certainly feels that way. And I absolutely want to ask you about USC. I think they're the most fascinating. They're really the team I was most excited to ask you about. You have a great feel for what SC's been in the past. And I happen to think they're going to be really good this year. I think I'm in the minority. Part of why I think they're going to be good is because how close they were last year. To lose 5 games the way they did, to lose 4 games with the lead in the fourth quarter, is almost impossible to comprehend. How close is USC to becoming the player they once were on the national level?
I think that they're a ways away from, to me, they're a ways away from, Pete Carroll era success where they're regularly winning 11 or 12 games.
Sure.
I'm just not sure about the defense. I think they're going to be better than they were last year, in close games. But I'm just not convinced that Lincoln Riley's going to field a defense that is, CFP semifinal caliber, CFP quarterfinal caliber. I also have kind of taken a believe it when I see it approach to what they're going to do on 3rd and 1. Are they going to line up in an empty backfield on 3rd and 1? I need to see him being committed to a more physical style on offense and to having his defense be able to tackle consistently. They can make it a lot of improvement, but until they do those things, I think that's going to be what differentiates a really good season from potentially a great season.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way. I visit with John Wilner. I think he is the authority for sure when it comes to West Coast football. Does a great job, and you can follow him at Wilner Hotline on Twitter. Lincoln Riley's endured a lot of heat. I think a lot of it is outspoken from Oklahoma fans. Then there was a lot of scuttlebutt about the Notre Dame rivalry and how that could be going away because he doesn't want to play it. I mean, how much of that is rooted in truth?
Oh, I think that some of it is rooted in truth for sure. I mean, speaking about the Notre Dame rivalry, USC's issue with that, and they actually have a pretty good point. If you get past the kind of the knee-jerk emotional response to fans disagreeing with anything Lincoln Riley says, they actually have a decent point, which is they are playing a game nobody else in the Big Ten is playing when they go to South Bend in October every other year. Nobody else has to make that trip and play a non-conference team of that caliber in the middle of the league season. I think USC wants to continue the rivalry. I think USC would prefer that it be played in September, like other non-conference games, rather than in the middle of October. Now, you could say, well, they signed up for this when they joined the Big Ten of having to make an extra trip to the Midwest in the middle of the year. That's true, but they're looking at it strictly from the standpoint of, hey, we're in the Big Ten. We want to have a similar path to the playoff as everybody else, and no other teams are doing that. So I think they would much prefer the game be played in September. They also would prefer the Big Ten's playoff model, and I don't know if you want to get into that, but if the Big Ten model kind of wins out in this debate, then the Notre Dame game wouldn't matter as much in terms of a win or loss for USC. It would matter in terms of a seeding, but it wouldn't determine whether they got in.
It's just amazing where SC is at. Can they actually get back? I mean, they have the number 1 recruiting class for 26. Can they ever get back to where they were under Pete Carroll? Is that possible nowadays with their infrastructure and with their resources?
Well, they have upgraded the infrastructure for sure the last, say, 18 months, right, in terms of support personnel. They're opening a new facility. I just don't know with the new era of, hard, soft salary cap, the revenue sharing and all that, if it's possible, for anybody. We kind of have to see, don't we? Is there going to be a USC from the Pete Carroll era, or an Alabama from the Nick Saban era, or even a Georgia, 21, 22? I don't know. I think it might be a little bit more like the NFL, where you kind of get some more parity.
Certainly feels that way. John, terrific stuff, man. Really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for waking up early for us, and enjoy your time at Big Ten Media Days.
Thanks a lot, Greg. Take care.
All right, wonderful stuff from John Wilner there. The authority on West Coast football is as connected as anybody. I did not ask him about the Pac-12. At this point, I just don't know what to make of them just yet. I feel like that's a conversation for next off season, but it's a conversation that will absolutely be had here very, very soon. I'm going to come back, put a bow on the show, and kind of explain what it is that we accomplished today, which, by the way, was very little. We'll do it next on McElroy and Cubelic in the Morning, Jox 94.5. Final segment here, Mac and Cube. Thanks to John Wilner, Adam Rittenberg, and Tom Lugenville for joining the show today. I have another great show coming up tomorrow. Eric McLean will join us at 7:30. We'll have the coach, Wim Sanderson, at 9 o'clock. Look, my friends at Shannara Flooring, they're really proud to be the only dealer in the area with over 40,000 square feet of that Core-Tech flooring by Shaw in stock. And right now, you can get $10 off per box when you order it from Shannara Flooring. That Core-Tech is 100% waterproof, pet-proof. It's durable. And if you're ready to upgrade your carpet or upgrade your flooring, Shannara Flooring is the group that you absolutely need to go with. They can offer 12 months financing with approved credit. You can see it all online at fooandyou.com. I love very much what Mark Stoops had to say. I think we need to listen to it one more time just because it's so true. As someone that has gone everywhere, I have called games in every league that plays high-level football. I've called American games. I've called ACC. I've called SEC. I've called tons of Big Ten games. I've called tons of Big 12 games. I've called Pac-12 games, Pac-12 games after dark. You name it. I've been all over the country. And as someone that lives the game, it's different in the SEC. I'm just telling you it's different. The speed, the athleticism, the size speed variation amongst the players, the length that you get in certain spots, it's just different. And I wholeheartedly agree with Mark Stoops when he responded to Rhett Lashley about the depth of the conference by saying this.
If he wants to take a crack at it, come on, strap it on and come try it, because I could promise you it's not easy. So I could tell you, I think anybody with any common sense can look at college football and look at our conference and know what it's all about. I mean, there's nobody interested in going back. Everybody's pushing the investment from the schools, the recruiting, the coaching, you name it. I mean, do we really have to defend ourselves at this point? It's just ridiculous to try to compare them top to bottom to the SEC. That's just a ridiculous quote.
There he is. It's Mark Stoops. That's courtesy of Unsportsmanlike on ESPN Radio just a little while ago. Damian, I mean, you see it too. I mean, you've been to SEC games. You've been to other places. Like, how big is the gap in your eyes?
It's pretty wide. And especially when we talked about the middle tier of the league, like it's at a whole different level.
Yeah.
It's week in, week out. Like we talked about, Mark Stoops' team last year was not up to what Kentucky is wanting it to be, but yet they knocked off an Ole Miss team that had college football playoff aspirations. Like that's the kind of stuff that you see week to week. You see a Vanderbilt knocking off, an Alabama, number 1 ranked Alabama. Nobody expected that to happen. But you see situations like that where, I mean, it's just the norm. It like Greg Sankey, I mean, the slogan is the truth. It just means more.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of resource, a lot of great talent. There's also a lot of heat and humidity here in the Southeast, but don't let it affect your home and your family. Keep them comfortable with affordable Train cooling system. They've been recognized as America's most trusted brand 11 consecutive years, and they're official cooling partner here at Jox. Find a comfort specialist near you at train.com. Look, I think the ACC and the Big Ten are collectively improving.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really believe that. I think when you look at the depth of the SEC there from, say, 2006 through 2015, 16, I think the depth in the SEC at the top, you had talent that was stacked. And it was hard for other teams to close that gap. Now, with NIL and with resources that other teams are now pouring into their programs, the talent's spreading out a little bit more. It's a little wider world in college football. Now, some teams like Michigan 2 years ago, like Ohio State last year, they can stockpile the talent, but that's rare. Yes, Texas has stockpiled talent, but that's rare. It feels like more often than not, talent is spreading out, which is leading to more parity, which is leading to more inconsistency, which is leading to deeper leagues. So if anything, I think the SEC is deeper today than they've been at any point in the last 20 plus years because of the talent spreading out across the board. Whereas in the past, 10, 15, 20 years ago, there was really 2 or 3 teams that had the depth and talent to be able to play at a high level.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think because of, NIL, transfer portal, you can flip these things around a lot quicker than you could, in years past. And I think that a lot of these leagues are, they're buying into it and they're just adjusting. Everybody's adjusting, they're expanding. And to your point, like there's a lot more parity throughout all of these leagues. And I mean, even in all that parity, there's still a separation with the SEC because I think they were a little bit ahead of it, and people want to play in the SEC.
People want to win.
Yep.
I mean, everyone in the league wants to win, expects to win. There's a reason why teams that were 6-6 last year think they can win it this year. I mean, it's just like, think they can. That's the way it goes. They're all chasing that ring, and if you're chasing a ring, go and check out my friends at Bromberg's. Ring and a natural diamond. It's one of a kind. It symbolizes the love in your life, and right now is a great time to go in there and take advantage of the incredible inventory that they have. They have gold, silver, platinum jewelry. They also have gifts that you could give to friends that might be tying the knot here at some point here in the next couple weeks. I know we're not going to get married during football season. Absolutely not. But they are probably going to get married here at the end of the summer before the clock flips over to fall and football gets underway. So go and check out Bromberg's. The sales staff, the service, everything is just an elevated experience when you walk in the door at Bromberg's in Mountain Brook Village, and at the Summit, it's Bromberg's. All right. Great show today. We'll be back again tomorrow. Lots still to look forward to. Continue our conversation on the ACC versus the SEC, future scheduling formats. And, of course, we'll have the coach. He'll throw us a couple of curveballs as well. 3-Man Fronts next.